Be advised, suspect is armed and considered extremely dangerous.
Welcome to the Safety Doc Podcast with author, radio host, and nationally recognized safety expert, Dr. David Perrodin. Join us each week as we discuss the best and most bizarre practices in safety preparation and crisis response. Follow Dr. Perrodin on Twitter at SafetyPhD. And remember, the truth will keep you safe.
Hey everybody, it is your good friend Dr. David Perrodin from down here in the infamous North Star Recording Studio, where paired with the Shure MV7 microphone is this brand new Audio-Technica headset. So some pretty amazing stuff. And believe it or not, I can see that the back is rotated here. So let me fix that. And I don't know why that happens, but let me take care of that here before we get too much down the road. So, and voila, back to normal. The headphones arrived yesterday and pairing those up with the mic. So it's a really nice setup here. These are the MX50s. So yeah, it's the best headset I've ever had. And obviously paired with the mic. The last thing is going to be a new webcam here coming soon. But today here in Wisconsin, look at this. It's a thumbs up already and we're at 5. So welcome to Bolo, Solitude Surfer, JLM. Hey, welcome. I was teaching today, so I was up early, 4:40, heading to the university, right? Drive for 2 hours, instruct and drive home. And it was a awesome day. So they are, here, I'll show you. I believe that's closed back, right? So these are the ATX M50s or ATH MX50s or, so yeah. And you can change out the ear pads, and I got to kind of figure out how I want to get these adjusted, but they sound great though. Like, there we go. So yeah, these are really nice. So I'm appreciating that, pairing these up obviously and the microphones. So big stuff. These are a little tighter fitting, not uncomfortable, just tighter fitting than the other headset that I had. So I have a cat that's Bojangles is lying down with some catnip here. He's very content. So if they work for you, I guess that's what matters. So I think they work. Yeah, they seem to be pretty good. I read and watched a lot of reviews before I made the commitment. And you can twist this cord out, and there's some other options to go into. But I like this one. It's got the kind of the old phone cord stretchy type thing to it. So it works pretty well, but yeah, so I am enjoying it. So I taught my final superintendent class today for the year. That class wrapped up. I still have another class with some more meetings, but one of my students gave me this mug. So this is laser etched. And apparently they make these in the district, these laser etchings. And this is a very heavy mug, by the way. It is a polar camel. And like I said, it's very, very hefty. So these are the 4 points: discretion, best interest, Board of Education policy, and induction that we go through. So all of our decision-making, who has discretion to make this decision? Do they feel they have discretion to make the decision? Are they acting in the best interest of the students or of the organization? What does Board of Education policy have to say, or how does that inform your decision? And then what's your induction process? So if somebody starts here next week, how do they understand what the expectation is for discretion, best interest, and Board of Education policy? So it all comes down into like the last one, make sure that all of the top three. And so it was amazing. I came into class today and this mug was there, and it's really cool. Like, I am very impressed by that. Last year we had class, and it was I think a day before, a day, I don't know, it might have even been my birthday, but students had brought in a cake, and so that was cool. But yeah, so again, this is very, very heavy. The polar camel mug here, and those are the 4 points I have up in the left hand corner of the board when I instruct that legal class. And best interest and discretion are both legal terms in education, and of course you have your Board of Education policy, which should reference out to your laws, and then the big one at the bottom too is induction. When new people start here, how do they know how we do things? So it made my day. It was really cool. Everybody in class it's a terrific group, so I really enjoyed that class. But yeah, that was really neat. So welcome to Vanessa and Bolo and Bacon. So what do you guys think about the mug? So here it is. I mean, I almost said pick it up with two hands. This thing is hefty. So yeah, it is sweat free. Superior hot cold retention. So yeah, hand wash only. So I am never going to use this as a mug because I don't want anything to happen to the engraving on it. I'm going to use it to put like highlighters in or something, but I am going to bring this to future classes, and I'll package it up well. So when I carry it in my backpack, but I'm going to use this when students are picking their kind of fate out of here for different activities, and then say, hey, like, here's the mug. But it's really cool. So what we did today was the last day. So first of all, let's give a shout out here. So it is Bolo, good friend Bolo in Canada. Hey Bolo. It was 82 degrees at the university today, La Crosse, which is right on the Mississippi River, kind of southern Wisconsin. So it was hot. It was weird too, because like the heat was running in the building. So I was like, oh man, it wasn't unbearable, but it didn't make any sense. I suppose they just start the burners or the boilers. It's a 1880 building, right? And the last couple of weeks it's been in the 30s, but so yeah, it was warm, not to the point of like crazy uncomfortable warm, but would have been nicer to have it a little cooler inside the building. But drove home, had the windows down on both sides about halfway, and that was great. Like October 22nd, just being able to do that. So that was really good. Tomorrow is going to be about 75 here, and then we'll have like 74, but probably rain on Monday. And I was thinking about, what I'm going to do tomorrow, and I'm not going to bike for a couple of reasons. One is yesterday I worked outside on the landscaping where the concrete went in between our house and our neighbor's house. We have their fence, and I told them I would not help them out, but they allowed me to take their fence down when I had the concrete done. And I said, I appreciate that. And what I'm going to do is let me put a really nice new edging and new stone barrier between our properties. So that is what I did. So I'll show you kind of the start picture here of what went on yesterday. Yeah, yesterday. Well, can't even. Let's do that. So here's what was yesterday. So, right. So those gloves, I had to replace too. Leather gloves don't last long for me. the fingers will go through. But so this was the old piece of edging right here that was, 20 years old or at least. And that was in here because this concrete never came out this far. And then it went over and it was never, I mean, it was never straight, never looked good. So what I did is I picked up this is a 20-foot length of commercial edging I had got from the greenhouse or the landscaping place out of town. And then I cut this down, and this is about 8 feet. It doesn't look that long, but it is. This is about 8 feet right here. So you can tell I added all of this rock, and then actually I had 600 pounds of rock that I added here all the way along. It's not done in this photo, but and then I finished. I dug all of this down, put this in a straight line, staked it down. So now this comes out 6 inches and has a really nice look. So the fence is the start of the property line, and then this is all their property. So I did this just as a thank you. I said, let me put a nice straight edge along here, and then they were really happy too. Like they came out and said, "Oh," and I filled it in with rock and then put grass seed over here, so it has a really nice look. So let me show you a different photo on that. So so here's what it looked like when it was all done. So there it is when everything was done, and I've got the topsoil I brought in, and this is all planted with grass seed. And then you can see the stones, go all the way up. And these are 1.5-inch autumn stones, so they're little nicer color because they're lighter. Like river rock is kind of blue, and I wanted something a little bit lighter. So I blended it in all over here because again, this is 6 inches further out. The other edging kind of was right about where the edge of the fence was. So it looks really cool. And so there's another, you can see, doesn't it look nice? I mean, so this, and again, all staked down. So I think it's really, really cool. Again, the fence is basically on the property line. So I don't know. But anyway, this comes into the story of like tomorrow. So doing this was pretty exhausting. Like it took me, just that project alone took me about 3 hours to dig out the old stuff to, I had 600 pounds literally 600 pounds of stone there and around the house I was spreading. And so Bolo, like you'll like this. Remember so let's go to this picture. So Bolo, I disassembled, and this was a beast. I had to dig out because it had been this way for 20 years. I dug out the scallop brick on this side and I recast them because they were pushed in by the skid steer. They weren't damaged, but so it was concave here. And there's a little bit of a gap there. So I have a rubber mallet, so I was pounding everything down, to get it to fit. So if that just doesn't fit with a freeze and thaw, I'll just put some sand in there. And no one will notice the difference. But and the grass, hey, look, the grass is starting to come in. So exciting. Looks good. But I fixed the circle, and I'm going to keep the fire bush where it is. So but I'm tired. I was tired yesterday when this was done. And then, today with getting up at 4:40 and teaching, and then, driving back, I'm just like, my bike is retired for the season. So I'd have to bring it up, put air back in the tires and just kind of run through all of that. And I'm just, the end of season ride was pretty good. I don't really want to, I'm not like, oh, I've got to have like one more late season ride. No, my wrap up ride a week ago was good. So I am going to get out tomorrow though and do like a long walk, like a 8 or 10 mile walk, which I always do like in the middle of summer. And tomorrow will be a really nice day for that. Shorts and, sleeveless shirt, 75 here. So, yeah. So let me, let's go through and do a shout out. It's hey, it's our friend Solitude Surfer. He's saying, did did you bike today? No, I had class today, buddy. And so Jim is, if the headphones work, I guess that's what matters. They seem to work. Yeah, your headphones have the same type of cord. Cool. Yeah, these are good. So I really enjoy. I listen to some MP3, some music, and they were nice. But yeah, so going, and I can replace the ear pads out and stuff, but it was just time. Well, the other ones had to be replaced, and I wanted to get something a little bit nicer. So gotta still get my adjustments kind of just right on here, but that'll happen. I just got to get used to them. So it's Vanessa. Hey, Vanessa. We've got a lot of warm weather. It's going to be coming your way. So, and let's see here. This mug, hands of everyone in audience at a Board of Education meeting would make a point. Yeah, in the hands. That's a cool mug. I mean, with those 4 points, like, I think like at a conference, right? Something like that would be good to give out to people. And I was amazed. I was really taken back by it. It was really cool that the student would do that. He's a superintendent in a district, and the students, like I said last year for my birthday, like I had birthday cake and stuff, but yeah, so I don't know again where they get the mugs, although it's that Polar Camel, but then in their shop at the high school, they go in and they etch them. So it's a laser etching that's on it. So it's not printed, it's laser etched into it. It's pretty cool. But yeah, the thing is heavy. It is the heaviest mug I own, and for the size, it's very heavy. So very cool. Could the windows be open at the university? I don't know. It's not real because the building was built in 1880, and this class is on 3rd floor. So, and it was hot outside. So it was 82 outside. So I don't know if opening the windows would have helped out any. And again, the building is red brick, so you probably just have heat coming up on the building because it was facing the sun. So it wasn't too bad, but it was noticeable. I'm glad I wore like my lightest sport coat as far as weight today. Yeah. So as far as gloves, man, I go through easily 4, if not 5 pairs of like deerskin gloves a year, and that's just firewood, outdoor stuff, moving some rock. I mean, so it was, yeah, I was surprised at how quickly those gave out, and those are pretty good. So yeah, the mug is cool. It's something I'll always have. I'll bring to future classes. I'll put it, I have it on my desk. And so this was a class that so today wrapped up this class. So they still have one more assignment, but that one is actually a one-to-one phone call, not Zoom or anything like that. It's a one-to-one phone call with me, and we have 5 points we go over, and then that wraps things up. So, but this is a really good group, and as class went on, I was really starting to hit my kind of stride and my energy. So we had a lot of fun. We did a tabletop exercise in the morning, and let me share out the, so this is the first time I've ever done a tabletop with that class, with that superintendent law class. So this was, so the tabletop scenario was a power outage at 9:30 in the morning in March, and it's 40 degrees. And as I shared with them, there are, I'm going to go through this, but this is not like very extensive. And we then, so the way that I do this, and you can see, so they work as a group. And so the first thing is, the power's out and your backup generators kick in at your schools. And then like I do additional things like, okay, the power company said power probably won't be restored till midnight. Parents are coming to pick up their kids. High school kids are trying to leave, who have their license, stuff like that. So we went through these injects, these things that came in. They did an awesome job. So I had with this, so let me do this. So I had a piece of paper, well, a folded large index card, and on it was the role. So, because they're all superintendents, like they can't all be superintendents during the activity. So one has to be like a principal, and one has to be like the director of buildings and grounds, and one is director of transportation. So I had these all, but they didn't see what they were. So I turned them back toward me, and then they got to pick one by one what their future was, right? So, oh, like you're the superintendent, so you're the one that's ultimately going to make the decisions, and get input from other people. So it worked great, though. So we had this scenario where, again, the power was out, and then how I do this is I start a timer, and then when people make decisions. So like the superintendent is getting informed by the other people in class who are different roles, of principal and stuff like that. Then, so like at 45 seconds, the first decision was made, and it was check how much diesel is in the generators. So so that was to see basically how long you could keep running. So I have these color coded. The only reason I color code them is so it's easier for us to look at like decisions you made at the start, middle, and end. We only ran this for 24 minutes. Well, normally I would run it for 30 minutes, and I would have a faster pace to it. But so they're not used to, so I was writing all of this down every time there's a decision, and they're not used to that, right? So they're used to doing a tabletop and talking about it afterwards, but not actually looking at the decision. So as we went through here, so like, at, let's see, 3 minutes and 53 seconds, the superintendent made a decision for all buildings to do a lockout, which is you're not going out to recess as an elementary. And the reason was to preserve heat. It's not a lockdown, it's a lockout to preserve heat. And also because they were unsure of like what caused this power outage, right? Was this a cyber attack or whatever? So they wanted to keep the kids close. So that's a good decision. So we go through, and then also at the 5-minute mark, they contact food service and say, hey, we don't have power, right? But if you have to, could you serve meals? And food service then, eventually gets back here at 9:01. Food service notifies the superintendent, yes, we can do meals. We can bring them to the classroom, cold meals, like we can do that. There were many parts in here that were redundant of like, what if parents try to pick their kids up? So we allow parents to do that, but then we're sending out notification. And then again, it came up again as another discussion later on. So there were like two things that came up in here. One was you got to figure out, like afterwards, it came up multiple times. What do you do if parents try to pick their kids up? Do you say yes or no? Because you might not have access to your system to verify. What if it's an adult, right, who's not the parent, but they're coming to school to pick the kid up, and it's like an uncle or something? But so you got to get that figured out, because that came up. And the second one was, what was the other one? I don't know. That was one. I'd have to go back and check here, but this was good. Like at 20 minutes in, the bus company, right, had checked with the bus company. They said in 60 minutes we can get a bus ready if you're going to dismiss. And so anyway, this was really good. So why do I do this? So that activity is all about decision making. And then afterwards, we go back in and we look, what seemed to be a theme that came up quite a bit. So the two themes actually were, what if parents come to pick up kids? Like that was brought up 3 times, then 2 times. What if high school kids try to leave on their own? Do you stop them? Do they have to check out with a secretary? But then you have no power. Like people are going to be scrambling. Secretary might be helping, and other people with getting meals ready. So what do you do? Or do you just let them leave, right? So we could see that that kept coming up. So obviously, then those are things you should talk about after the tabletop, which we did. Um, and you're not going to do a policy for that, but you probably would do a procedure for that of saying, here would be our expectation if we had this. Yeah, parents would be able to come and get their kids. And too, like if high school kids, I guess, have their license and want to leave, then maybe they're going to leave because you're not going to expend your resources on those two areas. So, like, I think the final thing was if a parent, they would talk to the news and they would tell the news and the expectation at the building for minor, for like middle school and elementary and 4K would be if someone is coming to pick them up, they have to show an ID. So then they should be able to still use their school database, download it to their phone. But I mean, there were some things that kind of, show up in this like, oh, we're not sure how we would do that. So I was like, good, you're making decisions, which is what you want to do. You need to make decisions. These are 27 decisions. And I said, once I really get rolling with this, and if we did this a few times, you'd be making like 50, 60 decisions. And then we go back and we try to code it, what seems to be happening. And it's not to second guess. But they did a really good job too on saying we're not going to dismiss, because if the power's out everywhere, we are dismissing kids and they might be going home to a home that doesn't have power and there isn't an adult there. So they were very, clear on their decision making. And this was good though, because again, I asked, had you gone through this before? They've gone through tabletops, but not in this format. And then I actually showed them pictures of how I set up rooms for tabletops. And but I said, when you do this, then do what I have right here. Present this to the school board. Also use it for your state requirement of a safety drill. So I said, it's really good stuff. So Bello was saying, looks great. Thanks, buddy. I think the headphones, 4:40 a.m. Yeah, you were still streaming when I got up. Holy smokes. Yeah. So, wow. Jim's saying, I've been inexplicably tired about half a week, maybe a seasonal cold. So Jim, if I can ask, like, what state or what part of the country do you live in? And I'll tell you that in the last week, I have slept in later in the morning. And not like I've felt tired, but like I'm sleeping later. Like I think when the seasons shift here, my body kind of moves into a slower metabolism mode. It's very stark for me, once it gets cold, but now it's like, again, warm for a few days, maybe a seasonal cold. So I hope not. Hey, New York Outcast. Hey, buddy. Speaking of it, isn't your birthday coming up soon? So my birthday is Monday, November 7th. No big plans for my birthday. So it's not a sentinel birthday. It's one in the 50s, but kind of stay home. The weather's still going to be about 70. So because I mowed yesterday, I also mowed and mulched and got my leaf vac and sucked up everything. So Monday's a day I don't have to do anything as far as like yard work. So could just be a chill day. I might take my lawn chair out my driveway and watch my new concrete, watch the grass grow. All good. So Bacon, a 12-hour stream. Holy smokes, man. I don't know the doc was into skateboarding. I didn't know. I don't think I am into skateboarding. So I'm not. I remember the movie Gleaming the Cube, which was about skateboarders. It's Homeless in America. Hey, buddy. Let's see here. Let's see. Betting Ballistics. I'll be back in 25 minutes at a sponsorship event. I mentioned to you today. And with the soups, right? Because I was saying how many soups have trap shooting teams. 3 did in their districts. And they all said the kids love it. It's growing in popularity. So I said, what's your policy or procedure for that? And as far as like weapons, basically, right. And they said, an adult has to transport them to and from the events. At no time, do we allow them onto school premises, but they said that's not a problem. People do that. And the kids letter in it, they competed at state level, but so it was, and then I just said, this, look at your board policy. And because my question there was, do you have a zero tolerance policy for weapons? Because that oddly has been the reason some districts don't have esports, because they have said, well, you're using a cartoonish gun in esports and we have zero tolerance. So do those districts also not have trap shooting? Or if they do, then that would seem really weird why you wouldn't have esports, but I don't know. But I was happy to hear that today, that the trap shooting, they were like, yes, and it's catching on, it's expanding, so it's really good. Um, so yeah, it's good stuff. So yeah, I did that. We did the tabletop in the morning because I wanted to do that while people were still, kind of fresh in class. Because I mean, they've driven just as far as I have. A lot of them. Some drive like the night before to get to class. I think I have one student who literally drives like 7 hours to get to class. They just stay over. Pretty crazy. But so yeah, I wanted to do that, and then we did. I didn't do as many case studies as I did in previous years, and I think that worked out fine with this class. I spent more time with their papers. I grade them by hand and go through, and then ask them and about you put this down. Tell me a little bit more about this, and we also worked as a class to develop your safety plan that's due for the state. So nobody gives you any guidance on this as a superintendent, right? Or your district. And so, and I'm telling them too, it's due January 1st, which is just crazy. Why would you have anything due January 1st? That's the state does that. So here's what let me put this out there and I'll share it. So here's the document, or here's what I wrote on the board, right? So we were saying, if you do an intruder drill, and I said, I'm not real big on intruder tabletops because I think you do a lot of intruder drills. There's other things, including wandering students and stuff like that, where you can test your systems. But the state requires you to do, it's called a violence drill. That's the title of it. It's not called a school intruder drill. It's called a violence drill. So, just in looking at that too, I said, obviously, kind of weird that that's the way that they frame this out. But so I wrote up here learning objectives for intruder exercise, which qualifies as a violence drill that you have to do for the state. And again, most people in there didn't know this was due, and it's due January 1st for this year, 2022, 2023. So you've got basically, a little over 2 months. I mean, you've got winter break and stuff. So, less than that to get this together. So they're like, well, one student said, I wish there was like the state or the organizations would, contact the schools and with a calendar and say like, this is due for this day and this is due. And I said, yeah, I mean, it would be nice if your state organizations did that. And also it would be nice for the Department of Justice to, reiterate that with your state reminders. And also here's some samples. But anyway, so I said, here's how to do it. And this is my model, which I think is really good. Learning objectives for intruder exercise. So we work through it. What do we want to measure? Not that you're going to just conclude the exercise and you're not going to totally hand this off to police to run. So what do you want to measure? So we want to measure crisis communication, our two-way radio system. So all schools have two-way radios. So do they work? So that's the first thing. How many radios do you have? We got 72. Do all 72 work, or does some of them not work? So how many work? What are the protocols? Do people know what to say? Do they know to go to channel 3 when there's an intruder? Or, I mean, how are they using the radios? Right. So are certain people told to keep the radios off? Like, so what is the protocol? What's the range of your radio communication? Right. What if some students are evacuated a couple blocks away, can you still communicate back with somebody who would be at district office, or if there's reunification site, like what's the range? And if there's an issue with range, we can come back on that, and maybe we can fix that with a repeater, which is something you can get to extend the signal. A lot of districts do that. And do any of your radios work with EMS and emergency responders? So are there some radios you turn to channel 5 and you can talk to the police and fire or whatever it is? So, and then also what people, have radios, what people feel they should grab the radios, what sites have the radios, including like 4K, and if you have an off-campus site, maybe you have some students, like in our district, some students are off campus and they build a home in the community. So using crisis communication, understanding your protocol. Here are some different training protocols for what to do if there's an intruder, and then also your induction, how you train new people, response times, EMS, and also if you're going to do your alert internally, how long does it take before all the doors are closed and locked and everything is secure? Is it typically 60 seconds? Is it 2 minutes? Or, what is it? So you're going to measure your response time. You're also going to measure response time for your responders if you do this drill. So you'd want to work with your police and maybe fire and EMS. Now, they're not all probably bringing all their equipment to the school for this practice, but you would want to, your police would be somewhere, right, in town, and then they would go from that point to the school, and you'd say, the response time is probably going to be 2 minutes or 3 minutes. So mechanical systems, do your doors lock? Does your PA work? There's a superintendent in class who said a new addition to her building did not have a functioning PA. So they put this addition on, and there isn't a PA because it was just an oversight, but just weird, and it hasn't been remedied. It's been that way, I think, for 2 years. Your electronic messaging going out to parents, how does that work? And then you have to have a fix-it plan. So if you have doors that don't lock, say, okay, who's responsible for getting this door fixed? What needs to be done? Do I have to order a whole new lock, or lock's got to be adjusted? And by when? So it has to be done, within 3 weeks or something like that. How do you stage your assets? So if you've got fire, ambulance, and all that, you're not going to want to bring them all up to the school. You don't have room for that. And they're not going to come up to the school during an intruder event because the police have to secure the scene. So really, you're going to probably put that stuff, 6-8 blocks away, as far as ambulances and things like that. So we talked about that. And we talked about other school shooting events and intruders and even university stuff where the stuff was staged quite a ways away. And you want to secure the perimeter. So you could actually test this by having a parent, who wears a yellow jersey, or a worker's jersey or something. And their job is to try to get to the school. So they show up at the perimeter, and then the police would have to use their verbal negotiation to say, you can't go up there. We're securing the scene, and we have to be able to get resources in and out. And you don't make that where it's crazy. The person, tries to bust through up to the school. But I said that happens all the time, though. So you want that to be your police, right? So you want to measure all these things. So suddenly it doesn't become just an intruder drill. It becomes a drill or an exercise. You're measuring communication, your protocols, you're measuring response time, you're checking your mechanical systems, where to stage these assets that are coming to the scene, and also where your perimeter is and how do you secure it. And a lot of this is police. What happens is it ends up being school. These drills get put together, and a lot of this falls on the school, and it needs to be balanced out. But I said, you put this into your report will shine, and your school board will be very informed. You get this out to your parents, and you say, this is why we did the intruder drill. Here's what we looked at. And nobody does it this way. So I was really glad. I took a picture of it, and everyone's, snapping pictures of it and taking notes. And but it's well done. And it's one thing I just said, it's not, well, I don't know. The state should give you examples instead of just saying you have to submit a safety plan and your board has to approve it. I said, the reason they do that, right? If you go in and you look, the reason that they do that they have that language is then they're basically putting the responsibility on the board, and the board isn't going to know what a good plan is versus not a good plan. That's They're just not used to that. That's not their job. Oh, so here's something else. So not to get into our Department of Justice here, but so before class today, because today's centered on school safety, I said, what is Wisconsin? Does Wisconsin have a school threat reporting system? And if they do, what is it and how are you aware of it? Not one student said that there's a system in Wisconsin. And then, so we brought up this page and I said, yeah, there is actually. It's called Speak Up, Speak Out, state contracts with this company, and it's free for you, right? It has a tip line. So let's actually go in here. And then so I show them this. They're like, I've never seen this before. And I said, that's a problem, right? Because the state is paying for this and they expect that teachers are being trained on this and parents and students. So you submit a tip over here, Speak Up, Speak Out Wisconsin. So the school, the event, your concern. Let's do this a little bigger. The social media involved, social media user, vehicle description. So anyway, there's a lot of stuff here, and call 911 if it's an emergency or crime, but nobody had used this. Nobody had trained their staff on this. Nobody. So here we go. We have this resource that the state uses and that they're paying money for, and they can say, we have a statewide reporting system. Nobody uses it. There wasn't one student that was aware that this exists. And obviously there wasn't one who said they participated in any training or that they tell staff to use this or tell their counselors to educate their students about this. So, and you look at this, it doesn't have a very friendly user interface. Also, there aren't samples. So that's the thing, these exemplars. And we went back and forth with that in class, not really back and forth. I just came back to it again and again and again. I said, make examples of things that you do, right? Of templates of what you expect. So if you have this threat reporting system, show us 3 of them that are filled out, right? So people get an idea of what to put into these area, what the expectation is. So here's the school submission requirement. So let's go to what's due this year. Okay. So this is due January 1st. So you have to have blueprints of your school. I'm kind of on the fence with that one. Again, it's due January 1st. Who makes anything due January 1st? So from a face validity standpoint, that's ridiculous because obviously the school's safety department here at DOJ is not working. Schools aren't open. So I don't like that. I don't like that date at all for this. But so you have to submit your blueprints, but you can check if your blueprints have previously been submitted. But this started in 2018, and you might be the 3rd principal or superintendent since that time. You don't know if your stuff was previously submitted. So this thing is weird. So I just told people, like, submit it every year. Like, just submit your blueprints and stuff every year to make sure that they're down there because they don't have a good way to check. They have here, my school submitted a safety assessment and checklist. My school district has a general document providing the date of training. So, and then any notes. And I said, here's where I would put down exactly what we put up on the board. Like, you did this, and the reason you did it was to measure communications, objectives, and stuff like that. But the other part of this, so a lot of people didn't know this was due. Actually, I don't think anybody knew it was due. And then they didn't know it was due. And then they said, they've never gotten feedback. The state has never responded to them and said, like, here's feedback on your safety plan. And I said, right, that's a problem. Our state does not do that. Kentucky has 13 marshals that they dedicate to school safety. And amongst those 13 marshals, the schools are all divided. So the marshals go back to the schools and give feedback at the school about their plan in the district. So I said, this stuff is kind of checking the box for the state, but I said, you want to do what we talked about to make it really valuable for your own district, right? Your communication systems and the stuff that I had up on that we put on the whiteboard as we went down. But again, to me, this was extremely frustrating because how is it? And this is the way that it is every year. So this isn't any epiphany right now. But how do we get to almost to the point where this is due, and no one's aware that it's a requirement that they have to submit this every year, and then there isn't a template, right? The school board has to approve it. So basically, at a school board meeting, they do what's called consent agenda. They just say we approve it. Like, it doesn't say that you have to go through all this with the school board. The language really is just the school board has to approve it. And then, so anyway, it's not a good setup. It's showing its age already. This replaced what was just a checklist, just a one-page sheet that got turned in that a lot of districts didn't even bother with prior to 2018. So in 2018, I mean, this was a big step forward, but it's not changed since 2018. And so again, people are frustrated, rightfully so today. So Jim is saying, I live in Michigan. So yeah, so Jim, I'm in Wisconsin. And for me, my body just recognizes when fall hits. And I do kind of go into this hibernation mode. So yeah, I notice it. And that's another reason I don't want to try to bike tomorrow. One is I'm not kind of there. My body is like, you are in hibernation mode. So come party with us in New York, Doc. Wow. New York. Wow. Oh my goodness. Dark chocolate raspberry filled cake for my birthday. Yes. Oh my goodness. Wow. The safety doc, did you curb stop Pelosi's face and make a mug of the day drinking cup? I did not. I do have this awesome mug here from one of my students. It has the 4 tenets of what we go through in class that I always put up on the board, and we go through discretion, best interest, Board of Education policy, and induction. So that was really awesome. It was cool. Like I said, it's a good class. I think, you treat people professionally, and that's one thing with this class. I mean, these are new superintendents, right? Or aspiring, like they're close to getting their first superintendent job. And, so I don't want to have them do assignments just for the sake of doing assignments, right? I need it to be functional for them. And that's why I allow this class the option to do the phone call final, basically, because I said, I know guys got a lot going on. Like, there were a couple of soups had swatting calls in their districts on Thursday. That was a big thing in our state. The calls coming in saying, oh, there's intruders in these buildings and stuff like that. So, one of them was talking about just how crazy Thursday was in their larger district. And, show people resources that they haven't seen anywhere else, and then actually go through and develop and write things. And we did the shared vision activity at the end. And I said, it's kind of, I'm not real big into mission statements. And I think this whole shared vision thing in schools is, I don't think it's done correctly. Not that I don't think there's value in it. I just don't think people do it correctly, because most shared vision projects end up with, our shared vision is that we'll get input from everybody to, make decisions and whatever. And I'm like, that's like the process. That's not shared vision. So I introduced a brand new activity I've never done with this class. So I introduced it today, and I also use a volleyball to go through and to say, like, the volleyball represents shared vision. Like, how far should it be between me and you? I represent 10 years out in the future. You represent the present. That was really good. And then, so we got into this. shared vision. And I said, this document is there. And if I were you, I'd use it because your districts probably do this. It's really trendy for boards of education to shared vision stuff. But they got to exactly the point that I wanted them to get to. I said, so what are like two outcomes, two shared visions you have? So we're taking like principals, superintendents, and board of education. And then we do this Venn diagram I put together. And so one of them said exemplar. We want to be an exemplar district because all of this is like leading stuff, and we want people to like come to our district to see how we do things, and then they can kind of model off of us. We're the exemplar. I'm like, boom, you got it. Like I didn't even tell you that, right? And nobody has that in a shared vision anywhere. And then the other one was that you're going to be leading in technology, and so that's where so your vision, then your resources are going to commit to like technology. So it's not this whole thing of like everybody's going to have input and all that. Again, those are steps to get to a shared vision. They're not the shared vision. That's where people mess up. And then no one knows any better. So you just see all this stuff out there as a shared vision, which doesn't get you anywhere. So they did a great job. And then, we had that. And I said, it's a resource for you, but no one is going to tell you how to do this shared vision, which is probably an expectation in your district with your board of education, and use this format. It's really good. Intruder drill. Didn't the Navy retire the A6 already? Wow. I don't know. I love the whiteboard. I've taught my children to get their thoughts up by using whiteboards. They come up with some crazy things. Yeah, that classroom has a whiteboard. That classroom has good energy. I teach the other classroom I teach in this fall it's not, so there's like 3 classrooms. There's this one which has kind of been renovated to have this, like the whiteboards and stuff. There's the original slate classroom where it's the full length slate boards that are 140 years old. And those are pretty neat. Those are high ceiling classrooms. And then there's these kind of in between classrooms where it's they're chalkboards, but they're not like old chalkboards. They're kind of modern, but it's a drop ceilings. I mean, it's still nice, but it doesn't have the same feel. And it's kind of weird because when I teach, I tend to like it better when I'm teaching in the way that the building is set up. If I'm teaching where I am north and the students are like situated south of me versus if I'm in the south and teaching and looking north. It's kind of a crazy thing, but that's just over 20 years there. I just need to request like certain rooms from now on and just say, these are my good energy rooms. This is where the magic happens. So yeah, and then I take pictures of the whiteboard and then I erase it down but yeah, it was really good. So it's Yawakowski. Thank you. Are you a new subscriber? Because if not, you should be. So we are hoping you'll be a subscriber. So I'm still at my sponsorship event. I'm missing a lot of the show, but I want Doc to get his watch hour time. So streaming on, oh my goodness, Benny Ballistics. Well, I appreciate it. Again, we're getting closer to the watch hours. Embedding ballistics, my students, my new soups, again, 3 had trap shooting, and they were just saying it's been awesome. Again, it's kind of newer in Wisconsin, and so very good. So yeah, let's see here. Let's see. Benny Ballistics. I prefer sitting on a dock watching the sunrise. So yeah, I don't have any dock around here. Well, except I am the dock, I guess, but sitting out my chair, I think would be really nice. And looking over my concrete and the grass growing, just gonna be good. It's misty, Mrs. Wayne. So, yeah. Let's see here. So, I apologize for the dark humor. I was not trying to be disrespectful. Oh, I think we're all good. I didn't see anything, or I didn't perceive anything that way. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. Now I get it. That's funny. So, um, yeah, so we will be 75 tomorrow, 74 Monday, and then in the 50s. I think through Halloween it'll be like 52, which is good because sometimes Halloween gets to be like 30 degrees. But my grass is growing, things are looking good. So yeah, so today, and so it's and now students, right? They know me, so they're used to kind of the way that I present, and I backed off a little bit today on this thing of really those points of saying, your state organizations need to be helping you out more on um, getting your sample plans out there, and also with the swatting that's happening in the state to help you with crisis communications out to your media, give you some samples of that, and then also, like, some students would in their papers they were sharing just incredible insight, on things that they were doing in their district for, whatever, if it's school safety or things. And I would point out a few of them, and I'd say, you need to contact this organization in the state, right, at their conference, and offer to present on what you just wrote. This is excellent. This is flat out excellent. People would go to this as a breakout session. It would be full. Like, everybody needs to know what you're writing about. And then the student had like a template they put together. And I said, you know, reach out to the organizations and say, I want you to consider this for an upcoming conference. And I say, what you'll do is, I mean, they'll give you the conference probably for free. It's not like they're going to pay you to present, but it's a way for you professionally to grow, and it opens up doors to all kinds of things. That's kind of it. Today I leveraged a little bit, and I said, I started out presenting at conferences, and then eventually I put on conferences. Then I wrote books and wrote articles, and I have the Phi Delta Kappan article, which we went through and talked about today, which is the feature for November. I've been on TV, and I said all of that starts from just kind of asking. And I said, because I present, people then share stuff with me, and so as a superintendent, right, you're going to get people who are going to become familiar with your work, and they're going to share stuff back out to you that you didn't have. And so, but another thing is, I don't think people see themselves doing that. Not that they're incapable of it. No one has ever said that to them. I brought that up before. Nobody says, I see you as presenting this information. Like, they do a really good in-district presentation on something like this would be great at the state conference, for 100 people to listen to. So, and I think, and people appreciate that, right? And I'm being completely genuine. I mean, and it's not hard for me to pick that stuff up. I've been doing this for years. And so, I can just say genuinely, right, I know what you're doing. This is conference worthy. Like, this instantly becomes a solid breakout session, and you're good at presenting. And so it's really cool. So it's all pro Lemonton falling in biking weather the next 2 days here, but my bike is retired for the season, but there will be people out biking. So it's Benning Ballistics. He's back. You're adopting 2 more kittens. Oh my goodness. So I was at the greenhouse, picking up some dirt. I think it was it yesterday? Yeah, it was yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday. And they had a litter of 4-week-old kittens, but they had all been adopted by people at the greenhouse. But it was a cat in the greenhouse that had the kittens. So, but they had up at the counter, there was this little black kitten, and oh my goodness, I was like, I forgot how small kittens are. We've adopted some kittens in the past, that just become full-grown cats, right? But I was like, oh my goodness. What happened at the school board meeting? So we didn't have so today was a class. So today's a law class I teach for superintendents. And so not a school board meeting, but we were talking about things that happen with school board meetings for school safety. But one of the discussions Bending Ballistic today, or questions I said, is, how many of you have trap shooting teams in your schools? And 3 of them did. and they all had great things to say about it. And I said, so how does your Board of Education policy look for weapons? How did you make that work? And so it usually wasn't that they adjusted the policy. They just had a standing procedure that all weapons were transported by an adult to and from the events, and at no time would be left with students on school property. And they're like, that works fine, right? But they were talking about how it's growing, and other districts, other soups were saying, yeah, we're looking into this. So all good, all good. I just, what I was trying to find out too was, what if any of the districts had zero tolerance policies, if that caused them not to have a trap shooting team? Because some districts that have zero tolerance policies did not have esports teams, because esports had, the couple of games had a gun, a cartoonish gun, right? So they didn't have that because of that. So that I objectively knew. So I was like, okay, does the same thing happen for trap shooting? And I didn't get an answer really on that, because the districts that did have it didn't have a zero tolerance policy, and the other zero tolerance policies said they hadn't considered trap shooting yet. But it was good. Like, the momentum was there. They're like, this is great. The kids love it. People are getting behind it, so it's going to pick up. This is really cool. So will any be tuning in Wednesday? I don't know. I don't really talk about the podcast in my university work. And the reason is, right, because the podcast isn't affiliated with the university. So I think I do mention, obviously, that I do a podcast. I did mention that, and I said I informed myself, and I did mention that that we would be doing a show, and it was going to help me understand the topic of arming teachers. And so, but yeah, I could. I just like my books, right? So I'll mention philosophy of information in class. School of Airs is actually required for the class, so you have to buy this book if you're in class, but it's a $20 paperback. But I mentioned philosophy of information, but I don't go over it too much in class, because I don't want people to feel like they have to buy it and it's not required for class. And it's kind of like with the podcast. I don't want to, I can make them aware that it's out there, but I don't want to try to use like positionality to say like, hey, like, come in, and it's kind of weird if you're teaching at the time and you're also bringing it up, right? But people do find the content, so that is out there. They have that. The podcast has really been getting a lot of attention from new subscribers. Yeah, ting. Same thing when I grew up in Wisconsin. When I was in high school, there were gun racks. That was kind of at the time of Wayne's World. Remember the gun rack for? Actually, it was before Wayne's World, but it was pretty typical for the pickup trucks to have gun racks and guns. So, yeah, I think you should create a snippet for the class when you get on high school shooting teams. I could. Yeah, I could certainly do that. So, yeah, I mean, that's a good point. We'll do that, and I want to have a snippet from a class, or an interview I did with attorney Mark Sibley a couple of years ago on students with disabilities participating in safety drills. Like, you cannot exempt them. So I want to kind of pull. You're right. This is a good idea. Like, I should pull some of these snippets out that specifically deal with school issues. It was good. None of the soups had the weird stuff a few years ago where they were exempting students with disabilities from safety drills. And I said, I don't know what was going on, but there were 3 students in a class, and they all had forms. And I have them. I had them. They submitted them. I didn't even believe it at first, but and the parent would sign off, or the school would sign off and say the student doesn't have to participate because the drill overwhelms them. I said, well, you can't do that. It's against the law. You have to participate in all drills. And if they can't participate in the drill, figure out how to change the drill or work with a student so they can participate. I said, I worked at the School for the Blind. I was the director of safety. It was one of my responsibilities there. And we had students who were blind plus had autism and, maybe some other disability, and they participated in all drills. And of course, we had a 2-alarm fire during a lunch, and everybody got out. So I said, this was really weird. And I think what happened was there was a conference. This is what I think happened. And these people came back from a conference, but one of them, the next class, they came back and said, well, I talked to our school lawyer and they said this form's okay. Like, we can do this. I said, well, I'm not your lawyer. And I'm not your lawyer. I'm not reporting you to anybody, but what your lawyer is telling you is wrong. And just flat out. And that's one thing, in class, they were kind of razzing me a little bit today, because the first couple classes, I'm really skeptical of the opinions of school lawyers on topics that pertain to things that we cover in the class. That's pretty broad, right? But so, like, what is your school lawyer's opinion if student who has a license, a driving license, should be able to leave school without checking out, right? So I'm like, that's more of a district decision. Like, if you contact your lawyer for that, if you contact 5 lawyers, you get 5 different takes on that. So, like, don't give your policy making over to lawyers, because lawyers aren't operating your school day to day. And and I said, I had a lot of interactions over the years with lawyers on different topics of school stuff, and I'd say, the more interactions I had, kind of the less I was interested in seeking that opinion versus like doing what I felt needed to be done for Board of Education policy. It has its time and place, but I think people depend on it too much, and I was pretty critical of some of that stuff in School of Errors, my book. But yeah, so people were razzing me a little bit about that today. But anyway, I don't know what rabbit hole we were going down there. So it is Ron. Look at this. It's Ron Wayne. I drink my coffee from a Star Trek mug with Mr. Spock's face on it. Most logical part of my day. That's cool. That's cool. Possibly the ARM teachers 1-2. I can't say my opinion is the ultimate fix, but it could shed an idea. Absolutely. That's something we didn't talk about in class, because Wisconsin doesn't arm teachers. There isn't a school board that's gone down that road in Wisconsin. But a couple of my soups have said, that those discussions do come up more frequently with some board members, but so far that hasn't moved in the state. But again, things can move very quickly. But I want to get people see. This is something. What I want to do next year is, so Bending Ballistics, I want to have an activity where there's a state hearing. So there's like a 30 days open schedule for like a hearing on arming teachers. So you can testify, and you could, if you're like a parent or you're a teacher. So I'm going to have the soups go down, or not go down, but we'll pretend we're testifying at our state capitol, which we did that this year, but that was a different topic. And so you have to decide if you're going to testify for or against, and you have 4 minutes, and you have to say what your name is and your credentials. Are you for or against this bill? A personal story, and you have to conclude with a undisputable fact. So, and I don't know where people go on that. And they'll be informed, they'll make their own decision, with their school board, but then they need to go down and convey that to the legislators who are doing the hearing session. So Bacon said, man, am I glad I went to go get beer when I did. Raining pretty decent here with lightning. Not a bad night to be home, man. I actually like those nights, those rainy lightning nights where it's not severe weather, but it's raining like the whole night. And yeah, actually, and I could go for more of those. We haven't had days like that. So in winter too, we used to have blizzards. We haven't had one for at least like 5, 6 years down here. But I mean, a blizzard where you'd be getting 2, 3 feet of snow and then an 8 foot snow drift at the end of your road or something like that. So there'd be basically like 2 days of just be high winds and snow. And I mean, if you're inside, you're hunkered down. That's not bad. And then I just go out every once in a while with the snowblower and kind of chip away at things. So, so let's see here. My state rep was at our event today. That's awesome. That's really cool. Spending ballistics. So yeah, I had, so it was a really good class. I'm glad I did the tabletop activity with the power outage, and it's the right one to do because it's likely something that could happen. And you have to address the same things. Communications, I think comms is a big thing because how do you communicate if your internet is down because you're used to sending out maybe your mass messaging and in your buildings, then how do you make sure the same message gets out to everyone? So we talked about that afterwards of you don't want your teachers to freak out or anything. So you have to have one message and then you basically convey that to everybody, and it has to be short, like 3 sentences, or where the power's out, we're in power companies in communication with us. School's not going to be canceled. We'll share more information as we get it. And then that's it, nothing else. So that was good. So that took a little while because a couple of the soups wanted to go down a path of giving more information out. And then as they discussed it, some of the other soups said, but we really don't know much at this point, right? So, but we do need some standard statement. We don't want people freelancing. We don't want someone to say, oh, like it's a cyber attack because they went online, right? And someone had posted that, oh, all the power is out throughout the state, and someone saying it's a cyber attack. So you want to say you have clear communication, like from the power company or whatever, and here's what's happening. And again, school's not being dismissed, put an end to those rumors. And then the third, so they did a great job with that. These are the type of things too, where, they're like, this is the first time I've ever done this. I'll look, and how long you've been in education? 28 years. How long you've been in administration? 15 years. I'm like, so, right. This shouldn't be the first time this crosses your path. So there's another part of me like, do I need to do not a book or like a shorter book of like school safety scenarios, and then also like how to conduct a tabletop exercise, like the way that I do it, the way that I structure everything, and I also told people today that I introduced them to Chris Voss. Well, to Chris Voss's work. Chris Voss is a retired FBI negotiator. He was the head international FBI negotiator for 15 years. And so Chris Voss has a book, Never Split the Difference, but he works with realtors, business people, doctors, and things like that. And actually, if you have him come in and speak, it's like $30,000, $40,000. But you can take his master class for $180, and it's very good. But I said, I'm speaking a lot today. I said, the Chris Voss, you're not getting this. Like, you have very contentious board meetings right now, like CBD on campus. Should it be allowed or not allowed? The mask stuff on campus, that was really hot, and some districts are figuring, what do we have to go back there, this winter? So I said, the thing you're not being taught is how to do high stakes verbal negotiation, right? And which Chris Voss program does, or like you should expect your state conferences to bring in a Chris Voss or somebody like Chris Voss, because, right, this is very relevant to everything that you do. So I show this clip of Chris Voss being interviewed by another show, and then this person, he runs them through a 60-second hostage scenario. And so it's really good, right? And then we watch like a minute or two after that where Chris is saying, "Okay, you did this really well," and whatever. But I said, wouldn't that be amazing to like learn from somebody like that? Or I said, I'm not getting any commission off of the Chris Voss stuff. I said, there's a master class, it's $180. It's well worth it. And for you to check this out in maybe your Board of Education, but there are ways you can phrase things and approaches you can use, which will significantly improve how you conduct your meetings, your high stakes kind of contentious meetings. And then I also said, I'm like, this doesn't exist, but it should, and it should be like something called high stakes aesthetics in decision making. High stakes aesthetics in decision making. And I said, let me explain, because this doesn't exist, right? There was a soup in last year's class, and it was a smaller district, and they had contentious meetings. I think it was pandemic related stuff. So the new soup was very good, and he was working with an outside agency on how to message, how to send these communications out to your community, and how to coach your Board of Education, your staff, everybody. It was all on communications messaging. This company is very good, but again, a lot of the soups don't know that they're out there, and there's a cost with them, but it's not that much money. And I think for what you get, it's well worth it. But I said, here's something that they did during board meetings last year. So I said, when you now high school sports seniors, they have these big vinyl, like 6-foot images of a player their senior year, and it's up on the wall, stuff like that. I said, they had these vinyl kind of 6 or 8 foot tall things that you put up of images from around the school district. So it was all kid stuff, right? And you have to make sure you have the permissions to use the photos, but that's usually not an issue. So you have a picture of, some kindergarten kids building whatever, or doing something, in a high school kids like in a CAD class, and whatever. So you have this collage, right, of maybe 8 of these things. And as you enter the room, then you strategically see, like, the first one is you walk, wherever you go in the room, these things are always there, and they flank where the board is, right? And I said, get rid of these meetings where the board is up on a stage, because that just sends the wrong message. So I said, you gotta, but so they changed the way that they visually had these, and I said that goes along. What they're doing goes back to the Road to Victory campaign in World War II, with the Committee for National Morale, this big thing on visuals to help people prepare for war, right? Civilians. It was very, very effective. Road to Victory. Wrote about it in The Velocity of Information. And so I said, who does that? Like, where have you been to a conference where they've had a breakout session or even a keynote? And I said, that soup, I was talking with him. I said, you need to present this. Like, you need to go in and, one of these things is like conferences. Sometimes if there's not a vendor that they can link to what you're talking about, they won't present on it. So I said, you could have one of the state organizations, or you could contract, and they could make these visuals, right? So you could get a contract going where districts could get a break on these things, and it could be maybe picked up through the school safety grant too, as helping to facilitate more communication on topics of safety during meetings. There's ways to do this, right? But those meetings that Soup reported out, those meetings went really well, and he thought that the visuals contributed to that. And they did some other things too. They had like chilled water, like bottles of water available as people went in, that the administrators were talking with people in the audience, not necessarily the board. You typically wouldn't have the board talking with people in the audience before a meeting, but not asking them questions, but just like small talk. But I said, like, how you conduct like this Chris Voss high stakes negotiating, the FBAN negotiator, I'm like, that's missing. Like, your professional organizations are letting you down by not bringing in anybody like that. And And I said, for yourself, like you can equip yourself with some of this knowledge, but I'm like, be the district that does this. And I will continue to encourage that district from last year to contact their state organizations and say, let us present and show some pictures of how we set up for board meetings, how we visually, aesthetically set up the room strategically to convey that the center here is on our students, on the learning that's going on, and to remove, right, that you're just coming into an auditorium up on a stage, elevate it is your board of education, right? I said there's different messaging you can do with this stuff, and it really worked, right? And that was just quick. You could also, and I said, I think it makes sense to change your location periodically, so you're having meetings out at buildings and people can come in an hour early. You don't have a lot of people attend board meetings, but you can have an area where some of the things that the school does is displayed. I mean, you don't want people just roaming around the building, but maybe it's kind of like an open house type thing but I said, it's not that hard to structure meetings significantly better from aesthetics, and then also like the language that you use, so kind of Chris Voss, and then also it's like Road to Victory thing. But like they appreciate it when I present it and I show them, and I'm like, this is all stuff you can do that costs you very little. And in my opinion, it'll significantly increase the effectiveness of your high stakes communications. It'll make you feel better. It'll make people feel more confident in that setting. It'll have a much better feel to it. So, and then at some point I'm always like, I shouldn't be the first one telling you this. It's not upon you really, but you shouldn't be this far along in the process, and nobody's ever conveyed this to you. And you haven't seen this at your state conferences, right? Where you pay $500 plus all of that stuff to go there. But Ting Ting, good night. So Jennifer and John say hello, and now I have to get them to bed. Good night, Safety Doc. All right. Well, hello, Jennifer and John, and thank you, Ting Ting. Wednesday night is Bending Ballistics. So yeah. Let's see here. Doc's beard is almost longer than yours, Benny. So this is 1 week's growth, but I shave my beard every Sunday. So actually, I like it because when I teach on Saturdays, it doesn't take long in the morning to dust up, right? I just shave my neck a little bit and I'm good. So yeah, it's got its grayish, but I like it more toward the end of the week than at the start of the week. But if it gets too long, then it gets itchy. And I did leave it like fully grow out maybe like 15 years ago. Yeah. So cool class. Let's see what was today's agenda. So yeah, so let's go over here so we talked about that the state has its system for reporting threats, but like people didn't know about it. And then I said, well, here's a system that I know about that's been around for a while, and it's safeoregon.com. It's the state of Oregon, and it's actually run, I believe this is still accurate, run through the state patrol. At one point it was. I think it's still accurate. This is very, very good. Again, it's free in the state of Oregon. So people and their kids and staff, they move from school to school. It's the same reporting system. They're trained on this. The students are trained on this. And then the districts get receive professional development. And what Safe Oregon does is they look at what's been reported like in the last 30 to 60 days. And then they kind of summarize that and put together professional development on that and get it back out to the districts. So they're saying, hey, like a lot of people are reporting bullying or like vaping or, whatever it could be, social media threats of harm or something like that. And then they counter and say, here's what's being reported, and here are resources and ways to respond to that. And then they also look at longitudinal stuff and say, typically this time of year, we see an uptick in this. And here's what we suggest as resources to mitigate that. So it's really good. And it's informed. And that's different than the Wisconsin system where you don't really know where the information goes. Like that's something the soups did ask. They're like, somewhere on here, if I'm submitting this, I want to know, does this go to the school? Does this go to the police department? That's not on there anywhere. So, and people say, well, the company probably said, well, that doesn't make a difference, right? Well, but the people submitting it, it does. They want to know that. They have that question. And if it's going to a school district and it's a student concern about bullying or harassment or something, and it arrives at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, what's the expectation for someone in the district to respond to that? Or what if it's a threat of harm to self and it should have gone to 911, but it gets over to the district? So those are all questions that need to be very clearly defined on the state system. They weren't there when we went through the web pages. So here is Safe Oregon. And here's their portal for how to report. You can do phone, text, email, report a tip online. I don't want to get too far into this, but so yeah, this goes to then a central clearinghouse in the state. And then it is parsed out from there. So it is immediately examined. So, but yeah, so it's good. It's very good. So, yeah. So, like it's frustrating, but wow, Bending Ballistics. Now you won't be able to play Santa. So, oh my goodness. Yeah, well, we are just basically 2 months away from Christmas. That is pretty nutso to think of. So, yeah, that is crazy. So, any questions you have about like the class stuff or any I don't get asked a lot of questions, but or any questions about the teaching that I do or some of the ways I approach things, or probably what's the most unusual questions that students come up with, or I'm mentally exhausted from today. That's Benny Ballistics. I imagine that competitive shooting has a high level of cognitive demand. So, any questions? Sibilance. So, got to get used. These headphones they're good. They're just much kind of different than my other pair. So, but yeah. So, what is? We also had during the tabletop activity that I told people, even though you might pull the card where you're buildings and grounds, right? Or head of IT or elementary principal, like this should have some level. It's not. So this is small group. So I said, the definition of small group thinking is that you're all experts in your own area. And then of that group, you're coming up with a decision. And, ultimately you do have a superintendent in this role. So they are they're contributing and they're ultimately saying yes or no on the decision. But it's okay if there's some friction, because there will be times, they'd like, should we serve lunch, or no, we're not going to serve lunch because we're not sure we'd be able to do that. So we should dismiss. Well, if we dismiss, people are going to go home and the kids might not have access to they might not have power and they might be dropped off at home. And so it went back and forth and back and forth. And that was really good. It's really well done. And there was one time I think with dismissal where it didn't get heated at all, but it went, well. But if if we if we're going to be like a community site too, then who knows? Like if this goes on, like we could be a community site, so then we would need time to get things ready. And then we talked. I went through my experience when FEMA took over a school district that I worked at. They took over 2 buildings after a flood. So I said, you're asking like the right questions, right, as you go through this, and and again, there are no wrong answers, but you have 2 things. You have to make decisions, and when you go back, you have to look at these decisions and say, what other options might have been available to me at the time? And we also look at like your first 10 decisions. And I said, in these first 10, most of these should be communication decisions. For example, with the power outage, like it was probably, we had 27 decisions total that were made in 24 minutes. But it was like maybe 12th or 15th where they communicated to the buildings what to say and what was going on. And I said, right, like if we look at this though, your buildings after 2 minutes of a power outage are going to want to know what the plan is, what district office is thinking. So once you hit that point, within your first 5 to 10 decisions. So I have to hear something. So my kids upstairs, but looking through that, I said, you've got to go communication heavy in your initial decision making to let people know that you're aware that this is happening, and get your initial message out, because otherwise everyone is going to be contacting you, one, because they don't think you're aware of it, and they're going to be overwhelming you. And then you're also going to have your sites, your buildings, including your 4Ks, which are going to start to kind of do their own thing, and it's not going to be in sync with what your message is, right? So you got to communicate right away. So that's one of your first priorities. When we go back, we look at this. So in your first 10 decisions, 2 or 3 of those have to be communication decisions. So it's really a good way though to go through with people, and just again to look at a certain point and say, okay, inventory your options. So right here, could we wedge as far as like the bus stuff? So another option for your buses, it's winter, like could your bus be used for like mobile heating? And if are your buses, so another question maybe you have to consider with your buses, are they fueled? Because if the power's out, the gas pumps could be out. And so the question, right, is with your bus contractor, the buses have enough fuel to do all of their runs, and the ability to refill without, do you have ample supply, or do you have some gravity, whatever it is, like, because you don't want to run half your students and realize that your second run of buses, not all of them can run. So we hone the questions so they become very kind of precise on people. Like the food service, like how many people would it take you? Are you able to deliver this in the rooms? Whatever. So, and we know that there's going to be some things like, well, some special diet stuff you're not going to be able to do. You're going to have to kind of make do. But it was good. Like I said, it's really good. So let's see. What is my PhD in? So I have a PhD in educational leadership and policy analysis from UW-Madison, which was, at the time I was there, was rated number 1 in the world. Now I think it's rated number 3. And my dissertation defense, my PhD defense, was a year-long study on high-stakes decision-making in the military, in healthcare, and in education. And actually, I have like that whole thing next to me in a bound copy. It has like 167 pages. So that was really good. It's a good process. I had 2 paid full fellowships to do that from the university. I forget the exact name of the fellowships. They're on behalf of people, but so it was high stakes decision. And actually, if I were to go back, I'm not going to go back. I'm done with all my university stuff, but I would like to do research. I'd like to get a grant like on aesthetic, the crisis communications, verbal and visual. And then also kind of the aesthetics of high stakes communications, verbal and visual, if that makes any sense. But because it's really important, and people just kind of don't think in that realm. If I was to organize a party for your class, who do you want to cater? I don't know. It's close to the university. So people leave and come back with their different bags. I saw an Arby's bag today. So that was interesting because I didn't know there was an Arby's close by because I have 40 minutes for lunch. But good question. Organize a party. I think what they would do is they kind of organically work amongst themselves and bring stuff in. Like when I had my birthday, like they just kind of brought stuff in when class was on my birthday. So and that was really cool. Like I just think I mentioned it like the first class in passing that one of the classes was going to be meeting on my birthday, and they kind of took it and ran with it. Like I'm a pretty cool prof, right? And I think the more you get into class, then you get to understand the style of how I present and the expectations, and you're getting a lot of new content. You're getting to do a lot of stuff that you never were doing before in classes, like this tabletop stuff that we actually did today. And so I think it's a lot of fun. Plus you're learning a lot, and I'm giving you the stuff to like, boom, like use this. So Bacon's saying, that's why we have a sump pump to steal gas from the remote station nearby. Oh my goodness, Bacon. So yeah, I think so. Now when I had the document up of the decisions that people made, so then I wrote those. Let me try to get that back. Right here. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. This is really helpful. And again, so I'm the one that is writing down the time. So 2 minutes and 45 seconds in, the superintendent contacted law enforcement to ask about the power. Because at that point, right, the soup is thinking there could be more to this. Because usually if the power blinks out, it blinks right back on. So just to try to figure out what happens. And so again, we go through. You can, when people don't do this, they don't remember the decisions that they made. They just kind of talk about the exercise and say, "Oh, it was good," or "It was bad," or maybe they'll remember a couple things, but they don't know the order of decisions, right? And it was to me, it was surprising. The first decision was to check the amount of diesel in the generators, to have buildings and grounds give feedback on that. I wouldn't have done that, and I'm not saying it's wrong, but I was surprised. Like that was the first decision that was made as soon as the power went out and the generator started, was to dispatch buildings and grounds to say, how long are these things going to run? Is it an hour or whatever? And then actually the person assigned to buildings and grounds said that they had enough juice to run for the whole day. So, for the rest of the school day. But I thought, okay, so, but by doing this right, this is really, and it's much more detailed this was a fast activity, but you can look at the progression of your decision making. And that is missing. People don't do it this way. And there isn't a sample out there this way. And the state should be putting samples out there of doing tabletops this way and how to document per time passed of what the decisions are. And I mean, I think if I were to do this for an actual full scale exercise, I would put little notes next to this so I could know when I threw the injects in, like, oh, like parents have just showed up at one school trying to pick up kids. But this is really good. And again, it's just, and I said, put this in your board minutes, put this in there's a section in the state report for other things. Do January 1st, copy and paste and put this in there, right? Make it all a PDF document, along with like the activity itself. And, I said, this is so good. But again, people don't, I get them there, which is good. I guess so. It's good that I do that, but that's where I think I could do, if I were to do a class about tabletops or something, there might be some market on the school side of that. I would do something like this of how to do like the best school safety tabletop exercise design, whatever it was. And yeah, create a class and show going through this and show how to do like report out and what your learning objectives are. Like, I bet that would have some interest because schools across the nation are looking for stuff like that. I'd have to look. I don't know where the places are you can go on and build a class, kind of like a master class thing, right? But I'd have to go in and look at that. But this is all my stuff. Like, this isn't proprietary to the university. This is things that I use and I develop organically all on my own. And then, bring them in. And I use these in consulting too. So what are 4K sites? That's a good question. So 4K sites are 4-year-olds. It's 4-year-old kindergarten. So most districts in Wisconsin have that. So it's before kindergarten. 4K is 4-year-old kindergarten. And most of those aren't at school. Most of those are like the school has partnered with a daycare or like a church or like a private school or something like that. And they offer the 4K programming. So kids go to school like for a half day, half in the morning or half in the afternoon if they're 4 years old. Now, but again, those typically aren't in traditional school buildings. Those might be at daycares. So the daycare has a 4K or a Head Start or the basement of a church, right? If it's a parochial site. So 4K is completely different. People forget about that. Like, I have to keep bringing that up in everything of saying, with our induction, how do you train your 4K teachers under expectation for safety? What's the expectation for locking doors at a 4K site? Or, if a building goes into lockdown, a middle school, how are you communicating to your 4K sites that this building is in lockdown? Because maybe the sibling is attending there and the parent is hearing this. And all your buildings should know if something big is happening at one building. Like, everybody should be aware of that because news travels fast, staff travel between buildings. So, but, we talk about what does a school safety assessment look like? I mean, if you have a 4K classroom that's in the basement of a church, well, what does that look like for different aspects of safety? How are you doing drills in that setting or in a daycare, right? That has a 4K site. Doc, do you ever have classes addressing mental health issues within youth? I don't, because I'm not an expert in that area. But in this class, we did address the Safer Communities bill, which was passed in summer. And out of that bill, there's $1 billion coming to schools for school mental health. So I said, the bill passed, the money is going to be arriving in your district, not too long. It'll arrive this year. So you have to figure out what you're going to do with that. money and you could have like a 5-year span to spend it, you're probably not going to buy, or you're not going to hire staff because you're not going to be able to retain them once the grant is done. But are you going to contract for staff? Are you going, what does this look like? Right. And again, I say, or I ask, like, are your state organizations giving you guidance, or the Department of Public Instruction giving you guidance on how to spend these dollars and to think about it? And they're like, nope, we're getting nothing. And I'm like, well, here's the bill passed. Like, the dollars are coming out, right? So, if you can increase your counselor time, yeah, if you're contracting with mental health third-party providers to come into your schools. So these are things you want to be thinking about, because when the money comes out, everyone's going to compete for the limited resources. Or is there something different, a different path you're thinking about going down? Is it more like a physical fitness aspect of mental health for some of your dollars? I don't know. But I said the regulations are pretty broad, right? So, but you've got to be thinking about this. How are you going to use the money, the mental health money that's coming out? I did, when I presented on PBS Bending Ballistics in 2019. So that was an hour-long presentation. I had about 20 minutes where I talked about mental health in schools. In 2015, there was a national bill, the Mental Health in Schools Act. It was before Congress. It looked like both the House and Senate were going to vote and pass it. It would have had funding for school mental health. It would have had a framework. It would have had programs, like specific programs schools would have been encouraged to use. It didn't pass. And then, so there isn't any framework out there at a federal level. In states. It varies state by state and usually district by district. So that's where I was talking with the Soups and said, this whole thing in summer when the Safer Communities bill passed, and there's $1 billion for mental health. I know that sounds like a lot of money. It is, except like when you're giving away that much a day to foreign countries. But I said, so you've got this $1 billion coming out. Like, yeah, what are you going to do with that? That money, like, you don't have guidance coming. You don't have a framework to fit into this. So it's going to be and that's where districts, I think, don't make the best decisions because they don't know what their options are, and they have only so long to use the money. But yes, so I spend a lot of time of saying, and districts will do weird things with mental health. Like Madison, just next to me, I put this in my PBS presentation like 8-9 years ago. They asked their teachers, central office asked their teachers to make lists of students that they thought had mental health needs. And just like make a list, right? That there wasn't any assessment given. There wasn't kind of any framework for characteristics. So staff submitted what was basically 16% of the student body. So they have like 30,000 students. So they submitted a list of over 3,000 students who they said had mental health needs. So obviously, like, they didn't have the resources for that, and they're just asking people to submit without any. It was really a weird thing. They shouldn't have done it. But other districts, they have programs where they'll say, like, student would get 8 therapy sessions if they're identified for mental health. And the parents can always opt out. The parents can say no. But at least in my state, parents can opt out of this. But so what do you do, though, if you have 8 mental health sessions? And that's not enough, right? So you have your 8 sessions that kids receive with a therapist who comes to school or something. And then, so you've got your 8 sessions, but it's like, okay, are your mental health needs addressed now? Or is there another 8 sessions? And typically it's kind of like, well, it's 8 sessions and another student gets the slot. They come in for 8 sessions. So, and then they do this thing of like surveys, like, how do you feel? Do you feel good? And all this stuff. And I'm like, that's so subjective. And things like warm weather in Wisconsin, sunny days make you feel good. And again, like if you have something negative going on, like if there's school violence or swatting right now, my state Thursday had several swatting incidents where threats were called into schools, hoax threats of shooting. Kids are going to, right, if you ask them, they're going to be very anxious and, upset about that. So what is happening in their environment affects how they're going to respond to these surveys. I think surveys are a really bad way to try to assess mental health in kids. But yet districts do that, and they get away with it because there really isn't anything out there that's like, if you're sitting down and interviewing a kid and you're qualitatively coding it out, there are ways you can get more objective, right? Or you can get a norm group, but just putting a survey together, and at the end of, so this is one thing, right? Like, so at the end of mental health treatment, say you've had 8 sessions or something, you say, do you feel better or happier? Well, most students would say yes to that. We just know that because if you take away the mental health, many research studies have said, people who have identified as being anxious or lonely or something, if someone just spends time with them, that they report that they feel better, right? So Dr. David Mays, in my state, he was a MD and PhD and was the head of the state's largest inpatient psychiatric hospital, presents on this on a regular basis. But so, if you assign somebody to meet with a kid and listen and to do these things, and you had a placebo of an adult who wasn't trained in doing any training, but like asking the child to talk about their day and whatever it is, things that they're planning for the future and just whatever, and you had a mental health therapist, it's that those studies really haven't been done. And again, I'm not trying to say the mental health therapist isn't valuable, but I'm saying we don't have, what districts do is very district independent. So, and unless we have these kind of placebo, these side by side studies going on, and I say that because maybe one of the answers is a robust peer mentoring program, right? I worked in a district where high school kids received credit. They received some training on how to mentor younger kids, elementary, so high school kids could sign up for this mentoring class, and then they would go down to the neighboring elementary like twice a week, and they got 1 credit for that. And then they were assigned a student, and then that student they would either like do some mild kind of tutoring, but that really wasn't their role. Their role was more for the student to read to them and to present like their work to them and to show them like how they were doing math problems and whatever. So and then they had some activities that they did together that were planned, like some team building, type activities. But that program was very successful, kind of on both ends for students. But I had an article that I shared with class, and I said there was a district that went to the strong peer mentoring program because they felt that it had a positive effect on mental health for both groups, but especially like the younger kids who are getting the peer mentors of the older kids coming down, and spending time with them on academic stuff and some other social activities, stuff like that. But we don't hear about that. Like, that is not, and you probably wouldn't get grant funding necessarily for that. And that was kind of big 10 years ago, like these peer mentoring programs, and they've kind of faded away. But I'm like, if you don't have people out there so you get $1 billion, and then you're like, okay, but like there aren't counselors to hire. The private folks are all like booked up, and we're already down 2 school counselors the way that it is. Like, there's just nobody out there to do the jobs. Does it make sense to do this? And what capacity does physical fitness have in mental health? So start going down the studies that do those correlations, right? Or relationships of physical fitness activities and mental health. Kind of, and what motivates is motivating, kind of like a Megan Asui and Drew Bay, but that's not where they go. So it's very nebulous, and again, it varies school by school. In school districts, like kids who are, they might say we're going to deliver services, but it's going to be in town schools. So if it's a rural student, we'll provide a service, but they have to be like bussed in. Well, there aren't going to be a lot of kids who are going to take advantage of that, and but that's one thing. There's a lot of money out there, and because we don't have a federal framework, it's creating a lot of problems. So it's Armageddon preparedness. Hey, buddy, I'm going to send this one out there for you. So, whoa, please subscribe and smash that like button. If you're new, please subscribe there, Armageddon preparedness. So we are up to 23 reviews on Amazon for the velocity of information. So always make my day. Post a review. We're up to 54 reviews for School of Airs on Amazon. Also available in audiobook for $10.99 from Downpour and places that sell audiobooks. Audible always prices a little bit higher, but narrated by me. So yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. So yeah. The sponsorship event, this is Bending Ballistics. I was at today for 10 hours is how we get the LGBT community involved in shooting sports and how to share awareness of the 2A. Whoa. Wow. Okay. Very interesting. See, I didn't know that nexus existed, right? So that's something we can and should mention Wednesday night. So actually, and two, one of the things, so when I talked about esports in school, so different, right? But when I talked about esports, I said, esports in a school district, think about it for a little bit, right? Esports for Title IX, the teams are mixed gender. So you have your Title IX compliances there. Students with disabilities have a higher participation rate in esports than in other sports, so obviously if you have a wheelchair, you're not making varsity football, the cut for that. So, and then also students of different ethnicities are more represented in esports than other sports. So I wonder with trap shooting, right? So that's a question, Bending Ballistics. We can talk about team members, is it boy, girl, so I would think also from a Title IX perspective, right? Because you don't have a girls trap shooting team. Like in our state, you have a boys varsity basketball team and boys varsity state championship for basketball and girls varsity basketball. I would assume in trap, it is all just you're on the trap team, right? So whether you're male or female, it is the trap team. And then individuals just would rise per the ranks and their performance. It wouldn't matter. You wouldn't rise like as the top ranked female in the state high school. It would just be like the overall, or maybe it's not, maybe it is male, female. I don't know. So you're saying there are boys and girls division, but you shoot together, but separate divisions. Okay. So, gotcha. So, but I think that's really interesting because that's a question we come up with in class is how are you expanding opportunities for extracurriculars and sports that are Title IX compliant, meaning male and female. So how are you doing that as a district? So like esports does that. And like I would think that obviously trap shooting does that too. Because right, you just don't have a boys trap shooting team or you just don't have a girls trap shooting team. So that's where it kind of gets weird with like football, right? In the state, because football is virtually it's all boys. And then volleyball was always kind of the counter to that. If volleyball was female, but now there are quite a few boys that have volleyball teams in the state, but we don't have a female football team, so it gets kind of weird with Title IX stuff. But that's where I try to get people to think, right? The students to think, like, the trap shooting is a way to give more options to be compliant with Title IX. So boys and girls shoot the same course of fire. Okay. So what if I can, why would, what would be the reason for having a separate boys and girls division for trap shooting? Is there like a specific reason for that, or is it just because maybe it just is mirroring what other sports do? And sometimes they do that, right? Because then more people can more of the students can compete in more tournaments, right? If you have boys division, girls division, you have twice the number of ability to go into competitions and to a state level than if you just had one division. So that's kind of out there too. But I was just wondering, like, if there's a reason. So firearm sports are one of the sports that gender has nothing to do with skill, although generally girls teams are better than boys teams. So wow. So yeah, that's kind of my question of why there wouldn't just be a firearms team, or maybe there is. Is there a district that just doesn't have enough numbers? It's a smaller district, so they have a mixed team, or is it more like it's an individual sport? So you could have 3 students, let's say 2 girls and 1 boy, but the 2 girls would compete in a girls match and the boy would compete in a boys match. I don't, so you'll have to help me understand that, because I don't know and I want to be able to report that accurately. So I think I found you in one of Bacon's streams or Sarge's stream. It's Armageddon Preparedness. I hope you're a new sub here. So as my voice is giving out a little today at the university. So wasn't too bad, but so what do? You drink Mountain Dew. The dew of the mountain. Armageddon saying there's also a group called Women on Target. See, this is good to know, because I see it now. When I teach about extracurriculars, and actually in spring, I have a pupil non-discrimination class that I teach, and that specifically covers Title IX. We have a section in class. So Title IX is federal law, and that's for schools that it applies, of saying that you need to have basically a balance between sports for males and females. So Title IX, when that was passed, then you started to have girls, basketball and other sports came up, where otherwise sports largely were boys. So you have to have try to keep that number balanced. And part of Title IX going forward is if you have sports that kind of cover both. So like esports, right? Esports teams are mixed gender, and they also are much more inclusive for students with disabilities. So that gives you a lot of range to get kids to participate. So I also want to be knowledgeable when I talk about trap shooting, and then where trap shooting might go as students get out of high school and maybe go to a collegiate level. So yeah, this is really, so I just see the Women on Target here from the NRA. So but yeah, it's good. So I didn't know about any of this. So at least in New York. Let's see. Armageddon Preparedness, you probably found me through Sergeant Doc, through me, just a guess. So, well, thank you, Bacon, for helping get the word out there. And the show's growing. I think we were at 1,241 subscribers now. And It's looking good. Um, Armed Divas is an adult all women's team. So, wow. So this is stuff that I want to be able to bring forward. Um, and I think it's absolutely fascinating that trap shooting is really never mentioned by like the state sports organization, and you don't hear it in the same discussion as school athletics or extracurricular school activities. But like today, the three superintendents who said we have this in our district, they were excited and they said it's growing, and the kids the kids love it, and there's a big fan following of it and things like. I mean, so they were like, this is good that we've added this. But I'm like, it's strange, right? Because you when you're in schools, right, you don't hear about this. What you hear about is or what you see on TV. So the TV station will cover the Friday night football games. And they'll give you the volleyball scores for your high school teams, but they're not putting down the video clip of here was the trap shooting competition today at whatever range, and here's the schools that participated, and here's the top finishers. Like that's never anywhere. That's not in the newspaper. It's not on the news. But yeah, like in my district, they have a trap shooting team, and a team that does very well and was recognized by the school board for a meeting that I attended. They were recognized for the students were brought in and individually recognized for their performances in competition. But it is something we don't see in the media, at least where I'm at. They have the Friday Night Football Blitz, which is an entire show on Madison TV. So they're just, I mean, it's well done. It's hopping from, location to location, and here's the scores and all that. But it's never, it's, there isn't trap shooting isn't covered. Like I said, maybe it's made the newspapers sometime and I never saw it, but it's not regularly covered, especially when it gets up toward a state competition. And you can't think it would be, right? But also, I guess you can kind of see why maybe the newspapers and media would elect not to cover that, which I don't know if I guess they're electing they're making a choice what to cover and what not to cover. I just think it's strange that doesn't receive more coverage. Now that I think about it, right? I hadn't really thought about it before. But I'm like, yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. So, when you get to pro circuits, like I am, we all squad together, male, female, but women compete against women in points, males versus male, but we're all ranked as individuals. Very cool. Bending Ballistics Armed Equality is FPC GOA version for LGBT members. If you don't follow Armed Equality, everyone should. They're doing awesome work helping get the LGBT community in the circuit. So, yeah, let's talk about that on Wednesday. So, this is actually, if I would have known about it before now, I would have talked about it in today's class. But it does. This is going to be something I'm going to bring forward into the spring class. So, by the way, the university has the wrong number on my class, which is really strange. So, I need to get a hold of somebody there this week for my spring. For one of the spring classes, they have the wrong number, and I'm looking at the class. I've taught the class for like 20 years. It's always got the same number. I looked in the catalog, and they just put down the wrong number. But it won't link then when students enroll. They gave me a number of a class that doesn't exist. So it's going to cause confusion pretty fast here because people start to enroll and they'll be like, but this class doesn't exist. Bacon saying to Bending Ballistics, my guess is that whoever regulates these competitions want men and women separate because they would perform equally well. One of the only sports women are equal in. And actually, Bending Ballistics said the females tend to shoot more accurately, right, than their males. But I don't know. I this is all really really new to me. I didn't know that this existed. I'm learning a lot. The lack of media support, this is Armageddon preparedness, should really be addressed by the members of the shooting community. Yeah, there needs to be uh, s- some catalyst to bring in media coverage. I wouldn't even say more media coverage. I would just say media coverage. Um, I don't know, and I mean I know people in our television media. Um, I don't. I would have to say, thinking back now, I don't think they're being directed to not cover it. It just isn't as big on their radar um, as like Friday Night Football. But I'm just saying that because they're not aware. So that's where the advocacy needs to come in, and probably the same thing with esports. Esports is finally getting television time and stuff like that it never got before, and newspaper stuff this year, like in my area. And I think it would probably be the same with like trap shooting. Um, that I would guess. I mean, frankly, I would guess that the media just is unaware that this is happening, um, or to the extent that it's happening. Um, so betting ballistics. That was one of our big things we addressed at this event. Was why aren't our events being pushed more? Yes, betting ballistics. You're right on, and that one of the things today which really stood out to me was again when I asked my students, my first year soups, who here has a trap shooting team, and boom, three hands went up and smiles on faces. And Dave, let me tell you about, we've had our team, it's in its fifth season or fourth season, and it's great. Kids are loving it, the parents, and we're getting better. And we have these three students who are ranked at the state level. And I mean, like they were there, and that enthusiasm and they could see where things were going. And I was like, whoa, that is great. But like, where are we getting the coverage kind of for this? And they're also saying, like, we have big turnouts of parents and people who come to these events. And I'm kind of like, yeah, so it's new, because that's one thing when Betting Ballistics and I do our show. And let me bring this graphic up because it'll be relevant. So dun, 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 dun. The Eep from Ipanema. So dun, 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 dun. I had a weird thing with my class. So there's a Moodle companion where I kind of store documents. And this class, I've uploaded stuff, and I see it here at home. It's uploaded. It's in Moodle, which is basically kind of equivalent of a Google Drive type thing. But then I get to the university and it's not there. Thankfully, I was able to pull one of the documents I needed off of my email, my university email. It was a PowerPoint, but I got to figure that out. So here's a slide that'll be Betting Ballistics and I will talk about. This is a clip that I took a screenshot from high school clay target league. And my state, Wisconsin, participates as a subset of this. So let's look down here. In 2007, 2008, there were 30 participants on three. This is high school clay target league. 2007, 2008, there were three teams. This is nationwide, and there were 30 participants. Okay. And even if we go to 2013, 14, there's 7,000 participants, 191 teams, 2 states. So that's just 8 years ago, right? Now we go to 2021, 2022, 43,000 participants, 1,400 teams, 34 states, including Wisconsin. So look at this growth. So part of this is, I think this has grown so quickly that, your traditional sports page that has covered high school sports forever, right? This is new to them. They're not thinking about this right now, or your television. They don't realize that in the last 8 years, look at the jump from 2014, 15, 3 states, and now you're up to 34 states. So yeah, this is, and of course, sports coverage during the pandemic, was just real limited for everything. But this is amazing, right? Look at this growth in this trend line. This is a hockey stick as far as like a trend line. It's really good. So this is Bending Ballistics. Like anything you want to add specific to when you're talking, like you said today, at a national level, how do you get the word out? How do you get more coverage of it? How do you, and maybe that comes in with media, it comes in with sponsorship, it comes in with, sponsorship, and then sponsorship might do commercials that highlight this. I don't know, but again, it's hockey stick growth, meaning, it kind of flat, and then it takes off. This is phenomenal, right? The numbers look absolutely awesome. So what do you do? What do you suggest? So that'll be a question I'll have for you on Wednesday is what do you suggest for these school districts to make more people aware of trap shooting? And I think part of it, like in my state, there were students in class who asked the 3 superintendents that had it, how did you start that? Like a couple were like, I didn't even know this was offered in the state. So like that was the range that we had in there. We had 3 soups. They have it. It's super successful. They're excited. We had some other soups who are like, yeah, tell us more about it, or tell me more about it. We're interested. We're not there yet. And there were a couple of people who are like, I didn't know this was even an option in the state of Wisconsin. That was the range today. Isn't that crazy? And then how is it that you have that much range, right? How is it that your state organizations, I keep going back to this, and you don't have conferences. So at your state conferences of school boards and whatever, that you don't have something about the expansion, the rapid expansion and popularity of trap shooting and esports. That's another one that totally gets ignored at a state level for conferences. You could take 2 of those and kind of present those in a, here are sports which have taken the hockey stick ascension in the last 5 years. And it's a great thing, right? And it also is great for Title IX and inclusive. And in Bending Ballistics, you can talk about this too. Like, so if you're a student with a disability, if you're a student in a wheelchair, I assume you could be on you could participate in trap shooting. So I think there's this inclusive part that is offered with trap shooting too. But yeah, so Bending Ballistic is saying the issues fall into media and society view firearms shooting sports as evil, and these sports literally make people gain immense amounts of self-confidence. I agree with you. I think that is a part of it. I also see what you're saying. A similar thing is happening with esports. So esports, I think there's some perception of esports of saying esports are just kids playing video games. They're just hanging out in a basement. And it's not really a sport. It's a video game, and they don't realize. I mean, all the stuff is they strategize. They do post game stuff. There's people who are doing like their real time interviews. There's this marketing aspect to it. Some of these kids, they have like the schools do Twitch channels and sponsors, but anyway, they're not taken at full value. They have to kind of earn that value, which is not really fair, right? Because other sports have had that, but it is this kind of barrier they have to overcome, is this perception. And so I think there's some parallels. Like I would love to see at a conference a presentation that would be split between like a keynote or a breakout, which would be like maybe 2 breakouts. One would be esports and one would be trap shooting, and talk with districts how they've started this, how students, it's not, gender specific. So you have your increased Title IX access, students with disabilities, how they're accessing this. And then also like the issues though of like, you're not getting maybe the recognition or coverage of this. So how do we get that out there? Because like I said, today, it's really weird. Literally, it's almost a third of the class. We've got this. It's great. Trap shooting, another third. We're aware of it. We're considering another third. We didn't even know this exists. So, yeah, what you're saying, I assume that perception is out there, right? That there's the presumption if you own firearms, you're extreme right wing. And that's, yeah, I would think that plays maybe into some school board decisions if this has come up for board consideration. I don't know enough about that. I mean, this is still pretty new to me, but yeah, so shooting sports are for everyone. Yeah, I need to do some research, or if you know anybody that you can share, say like, I know, if you know somebody who has a disability and shoots, what the accommodations. I think there are, I mean, I know there are programs around here for hunting. If a person is like uses a wheelchair where they have accommodations for hunting. I don't know enough about it, right? But what I'm trying to get at is I think that trap shooting offers a higher level of inclusive access than, let's say, playing varsity football or varsity basketball, right? Not that those are bad or anything like that, but just saying if we look at the level of access, right? If you have a disability, like let's say again, wheelchair, if you have a wheelchair, you will not make a varsity basketball team or a varsity football team, but you could have an option possibly to participate in trap shooting with some accommodation. I'm not accurate in what I'm saying at all, but I would assume there's examples like that out there. Armageddon saying you have to look at media companies, whether they are small, local, or larger, or national, as investors. They only invest their time where the money is for the advertisers. Yeah. So Armageddon, do you think though that advertising, if you did center it around like trap shooting, some of it, I don't know. I think like in Wisconsin, I think that would be received well. Like I think you could do, let's say like a Cabela's crossover marketing type thing with trap shooting teams. And for example, like the esports, they have some sponsors like Jolly Good Soda is a sponsor, and some of that stuff that kind of developed. But I wonder, because I mean, Fleet Farm and places like that around here, they sell firearms and are Cabela's, and so I don't know. It's a good question. And I could kind of see, do you start to have sponsorship for some of these events? Like the high school girls basketball tournaments are sponsored by insurance companies, and the commercials are on there and things. I think there is, my perception would be, because it's the hockey stick. Like if we just look at the growth in the last 5 years, how sharp that growth has been from, just a couple states to 34 states. People haven't caught up with it yet, and COVID threw everything off. So it is a matter of having to get out there and to make people aware and to advocate for your sport. And that's where, like the sanctioning bodies, I would think of these competitions. So, like like I said, the girls and boys basketball team, when they compete at the state level and stuff, that's televised, and there's sponsors and stuff like that. And I don't know. Um, so let's Benny Ballistics. There's a guy on my team who's wheelchair bound. I'm 25% permanently disabled myself from a botched knee surgery. So, okay. So this is where trap trap shooting also has some easements or some entry points for, we'll just say, youth with disability, because I'm going to be talking to my, about, we'll be talking about the high school teams, but so, that's really, um, it's important to note, because when you do that, there's another area of the non-discrimination or equity law, which is the Individuals with Disability Education Act, IDEA. And you now are increasing access for participation for students with disabilities. Doesn't guarantee access, right? But you're giving a higher level of access than other cut criteria sports. So again, as you said, there's a guy on the team who's wheelchair bound, right? That guy would not make the cut criteria. And also, if someone made the cut criteria, you wouldn't be allowed to have a wheelchair on a football field. So, so I think it's really, there's many areas positively that trap shooting covers. So again, like our discussion tonight has given me many ideas, things that I would have brought up today. And I'll probably maybe I could bring it up in my final, the exam phone call with students. So like I've got, that really stays on a tight schedule, but I could just mention that at the end of saying, hey, like, I don't know, in class we had kind of a third had the programs, third were interested, third didn't know. So, check into that. Here's the soups that had it. So, shooting events in high school trap, do national events. Yeah. Wow. So this is amazing. I think what I need to do also is to look around on YouTube for like high school trap shooting, and probably like Wisconsin, and try to and try to find where I can show a clip. Like I'll watch a video. Like today, we went through a few videos, but I'm like, I can't just be showing videos during class. I just want to show like this 2-minute segment. But I think it would be fascinating to show like a 2-minute segment of a high school trap shooting competition in Wisconsin. I'm sure that's out there on YouTube. Benny Ballistic says, Doc, I'll give you my phone number on Wednesday if you need any help with it. So sounds good. Armageddon, trap shooting, rifle and handgun opportunities. Yeah. So so my question there, again, I don't know this, so high school, is that more than just trap shooting? Is it trap shooting, rifle and handgun, all in high school? Is that with the high school teams? Or is it just limited to trap shooting? So, can give me the feedback on that. But it's cool too, because I have an activity in spring where students can sign up for different topics and do a presentation. And I'm going to add this in as a topic. Actually, I'm going to kind of redo my topics and kick out some, and this is one that I want to bring in. And I do want to emphasize it. So like that somebody takes it, because I'll probably give, I give more opportunities than what people will sign up for. But I'm going to say, like, if you have this in your district, this would be great for you to talk about this and to share it. Good. The Shooters Network practice score is another one that you can look up matches. Nice. Benny Ballistics. Armageddon is talking 3-gun. The youth do that too, but my local high school has a trap and rifle team. Okay. I got to look into my high school and see if they have the trap in rifle. Armageddon says, I'm in New York. Depending on the area, schools will do all those. Wow. Including archery. Yeah. Nice. We don't have archery here, and I don't know how prevalent archery is in the state. Um, but so I can kind of sense like an activity in one of my future classes, and the activity would be in 60 seconds. So I will give you a note card, a large note card. In 60, I'm going to time you and I'll say go. In 60 seconds, I want you to write down um, as many high school sports as you can think of, right? And then when they turn in the cards at the end of 60 seconds and they get them to me, I'll go up above and I'll put like, you know, basketball, football, whatever. And I'm assuming that most students, which are going to be aspiring administrators, they'll put down basketball, volleyball, football, soccer, like those things will be there. And then but then as far as like for trap shooting, right, I'll have it off on the side because there are 85 school districts in the state that do it, in my state, out of 421. And I don't think anybody will put trap shooting. I could be wrong, but I don't think anybody will. So so that'll be a good activity then to say, okay, like how about this? And figure out which districts have it. And then also say, right, we're talking about non-discrimination and what you're talking about betting ballistics on LGBTQ, and then also for Title IX and for people with disabilities, kids with disabilities, youth with disabilities. Like this is an important sport that crosses into those areas. And like, okay, like nobody mentioned this. So why not? Is it just because it's newer and you're not hearing about it? Is it not getting the media coverage? I don't think they're not going to say we're not told to talk about it. Or it's a stigma or something like that. But it'll be interesting, because it's popular, right? It's going to be interesting to see, and then also to say, right? But so, as a person that oversees pupil non-discrimination and this, Title IX in your district, like you need to become informed of trap shooting, right? And the benefit that it brings. There's this overarching benefit, right? Betting ballistics, Ron Wayne, and it really is Armageddon preparedness. Students who participate in sports tend to, and this whole school connectedness, tend to have better attendance, better academics, fewer discipline events. That's pretty relational to participation when there's this code of conduct that's required to maintain in sports, right? So, like no fighting, no drinking, no drugs, or you're booted off of sports, so that you have your athletic code of conduct. And also the impact of working with a coach, right? And into something that is organized and objectives that you're being taught, right? And meeting those objectives and meeting your personal goals and responsibility. I mean, all these things are components of sports and extracurriculars to different varying levels. But here I would say it's a very high level of skill that is being acquired. And then this probably higher intensive level of coaching, especially when a student is learning firearms, right? That someone is going to be with them. So you'd have this very positive correlation, or at least in a relationship statistically, of saying, if we really look at these students, right, attendance and these things over the whole body of students that are participating in trap shooting, firearms, sports, that compared to the peers who are not participating in any sports, like you could do these things and say, like their attendance is higher, and their academic performance is higher. I mean, these things can be done, and you just need to pull the data out. It's not that hard. You need at a district level, you could do this pretty easily. Um, this wouldn't take more than 30 minutes at a district level to figure this out through the data system. But that's where I would teach people, like, come in and make these arguments of why these are necessary from a standpoint of these things. And I mean, there's also research stuff that's out there, but it's going to be more anecdotal at a school level of students that participate in organized um, activities are less likely to have like suicidal ideation and things like that. But I mean, schools aren't set up to be research settings for that type of stuff. But I mean, um, I think I'm excited about this because I can just see this activity unfolding in my mind where the students are writing down feverishly and they think they've covered every single sport that their school district has in 60 seconds. And then when we get up to the board, or I get up to the board and start tallying them, and I can show the missing. And esports will probably be missing in there too. Um, and that's really the way people learn, right? They don't learn by me like just lecturing and telling them the stuff. They learn from generating that themselves. Then you ask, like, well, why did you not think about this? Does your district have it? Yeah, I just didn't think about it, right? It hasn't been around that long, and it's not really, I don't know, we just doesn't seem talked about a lot in the district. The kids who are interested in it kind of just go out in it. And but yeah, I don't know. I'll let the students answer that one, and maybe I'll be surprised. Like, maybe this is all predictive, and I'll be wrong, and 4 or 5 students will mention it, but then it's good because then it'd be like, whoa, so you mentioned this. This isn't what I probably anticipate. So how are you familiar with this? How's it being communicated out in your school? And so I don't know, it's really cool. It's great. Yeah, you wait till. Thanks, Ron. Wednesday night will be awesome with bending ballistics. I'm kind of just playing off of, the class that I had today, and actually, I'm glad I did the stream because it's given me a lot of information to come into Wednesday night with, and information that I want to start putting together already for that spring class. So some research I can do like locally on teams, and is it rifle or is it just trap shooting, and try to do I'll do just some internet queries and how much of it is coming up with our 85 teams in the state for like reports and stuff like that. And it's good. It's really good. The good thing is, I think this is really good though, right? It's the hockey stick. It's taking off. So it's growth. It's growth. So it is on a terrific course. Armageddon Preparedness saying children and teens definitely need more social interaction. Yeah, absolutely. And so this is another option to do that. So, wow. There was a high school bending ballistics rifle team out of Pennsylvania that just competed in a worldwide rifle competition in France. Now that is amazing. So, let me just see if I can find the story. Pennsylvania team. In France. All right. Dun, 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 dun. And the Eep from Ipanema. So, I can't find the article, but I found like a ton of articles about trap shooting teams in Pittsburgh's or in Pennsylvania. Like they're all over the place. So, holy smokes. Yeah. I mean, honestly, I've never done any inquiry in this area at all. So here's what I'm looking at. Amory High School, with a head on the stock and an eye on the rock, Amory trap shooting team is ready to compete. Hey, there's their sponsors. Let's see who sponsors them. St. Croix, that's water. Vans, what? That's shoes. A&E, that's not the TV channel. I don't know what that is. Taco Town, that's a given. The Barbershop, the Dork Boys, the Thick Boys, I don't know what that is. The Truck Boys, Royal Plumbing, Celtic Cattle Connection. It's kind of blurred out here. Cousins Home Improvements, Indian Head Habitat Services, and again, another sponsorship from Taco Town. So this is local sponsorship, although like I'm guessing the St. Croix one is in Vans is a little bit bigger, unless that's like something else Vans. But that's cool. That's very cool. So Taco Town. Look up PRS World Championship. PRS World. Oh. All right. Got it. Here it is. Yep. So Team USA wins precision rifle championships, and this is in France. I'm trying to get the first ever world championship of precision rifle was held in France, August 6th through the 12th. 250 shooters from 26 nations. All right. Yep. Team USA crushed the competition, taking first place in open, limited, and ladies divisions. So this is amazing. Okay. Wow. Very cool. So there's the team. Man, I would buy one of those shirts, by the way. Kind of just a fan, you know. I would that is really cool well, I guess it's a shooting jersey, right? Is what you would refer to that as, but that is I would love to own one of those. Yeah, I would definitely wear this 100%. So Allison Zane. Yeah. Have you ever done any competitive shooting, Doc? I have not. Nope, never competitive shooting. So, this sounds pretty amazing, though. And again, like looking at the growth in the high school part of this from 3 schools in one state to, 2 or 3 schools 5 years ago to now 34, or 3 or 3 states, now 34 states. I don't know if I was school age, right, and this was an option, I'd be interested. I played, I was kind of like a football, fall, basketball, winter, baseball, spring person. So like if it overlapped, those would still probably be like my primary sports, but for Wisconsin. So, but I mean, I think this is awesome. And as an administrator, I would completely support this. And again, it really amazes me even more going back to that conversation 12 hours ago, in class, literally, where a third of the students said we have a team and it's terrific and they're enthused about it. Another third said, yeah, we're aware of it and we're checking it out. And another third said, I've never heard about this. I have no concept of what a trap shooting team. I know there's trap shooting ranges and things like that. I didn't know there was a high school team. These are all superintendents, right? So then they're good people. It's just like, so how is the information not getting to them? It's kind of this, it's somewhat similar with esports when we did that. There was more awareness, but there were still a couple people who are like, I didn't know that there were an esports league. And that's not on those people. They've got a lot of things going on, but how are they how's the word getting out there? And I can tell you with certainty, this isn't going to be on the state school board agenda for their state conference in January. They won't have this on. They won't have esports or trap shooting and the hockey stick and the growth of this. And, of course, the positive impact this has for youth, but then also Title IX and access for youth with disabilities. I mean, things which should be cheered and championed and celebrated. And these students, come in some video and to have them talk about their experiences and to give some context to the school board. These are school board members who attend this from all over the state, 421 districts. But it won't happen. So I've gotten really good in my old age of here's something I do, and I go through conferences, right? The state conferences for education, and I look at every topic, and then there's always a little description, right? And I'll be like, okay, like this seems like it's relevant and has value. This doesn't have value. This is already addressed in 3 other sessions. And then it's kind of like, how about this? How about trap shooting and esports? Okay, those types of things. How about how to do a tabletop and do a tabletop simulation where you have some people in the room who do a tabletop for 20 minutes, and then kind of like what I did in class, and show people actually how to do that. And other people can kind of set it up around the outside so they can see the decisions. And as people are doing this, and kind of as the facilitator, as me, I'm running it, right? So people can see that and maybe record it, so it's available after. And people, if they go there, they can get the template for whatever activity was done in that session. Though they won't do that. And they should, but they won't. But then, it's weird. It's weird stuff. I always, and I looked at the vendor stuff was just always so cringe at those things, the vendor selling stuff. And like, I had a superintendent today told me they had a new addition put on a building. And I think I shared this before, but it's been 2 years. It's 2 years old. When the company put the addition on, they didn't put a PA system. They didn't extend it from the existing school to the new construction. And they also aren't building these with the new strobe lights and the new sirens, which are recommended for people with autism. That's actually a building recommendation. You'll see it like in new hospitals and things like that, but they're not putting those in. It's not that they're really more expensive. If you choose them from the start, it's not that big of a deal. And you don't see, here's another thing. All these referendums, we have $1.9 billion in school referendums in my state in November 8th. And these blueprints coming out for new construction, they don't have better air filtration systems than 2019. So you would think, right, that any filtration system, air filtration system in a new school would be like a higher MER rating to get particulate matter, or it would have some UV treatment, or like going through what we've gone through the last few years and schools being closed, like that would be part of new construction. It's not. And so, I asked the soup set, I said, so what's the message here, right? Like, because if you build it from the start with the ability to do this, it's not that big of a deal. As far as like your referendum, it's not changing the cost of your referendum that much. And if it does bump your referendum cost up, it's likely you could market this to your community and they would back that up, right? Of saying there's less likelihood we would have to close schools down if we had a better filtration system, which is probably accurate. Um, but they're not, so they're not changing school construction for HVAC. So, we're going through that. And I'm like, doesn't make any sense. It does. It doesn't make any sense. Really, really strange. So, but that's a weird tangent. But yeah, I think what happens in school construction more and more is there isn't a site-based manager from the district. So it's whatever the low bid is, right? Comes in and then they subcontract this stuff out. And schools always pay the money. So um and you finish something and there's always turnover in a school too. So if you build something new and 3 years from now, the carpet is pulling up and the ceiling leaks, right? And there's water pooling in a lower part of the building. 3 years from now, the superintendent that was there when that was approved and that building opened, they're probably gone, and probably half the board is gone, if not more. So, I think to build these things, the detail isn't there as much. And I had numerous superintendents tell me that about new construction, things in the last 3, 4 years of just going in and so many finishing details aren't there. Um, and then as we talked about right now, like how do you not include in new construction a better air filtration system than 2019, which was probably similar to like 1990, right? There wasn't really any change. How do you not do that? Because that was a big thing from, the U.S. Department of Ed when ESSER dollars came out, pandemic relief dollars to schools, improve your HVAC systems. So if you're building from scratch, right, it's much less to do that than if you're trying to retrofit. So it's this weird thing because it doesn't make sense to me. And it probably shouldn't make, I don't know. MERV treatment, that's a term I had to learn due to heavy smoke back in 20. So MERV, what does MERV stand for? MERV is minimum efficiency reporting values. So, okay. Oop. 8 is deemed okay. 13 is deemed good for pollen and so like if you have a MERV rating of 8, which is pretty typical in traditional school building, and now schools are being built, they're usually like, so the new buildings coming out, you can't open any windows. So these are very regulated by the systems. 13 is deemed to be like a very good system. You need a bigger motor to run 13. You run into other structural things like there's the speed of air is faster through your vents. So you have to use a better, more dampening and a better type of sheet metal. So you don't have a thunderstorm in your ducts every time your furnace is circulating air. But again, if you build that from scratch, like if it's in the original design, it's not that big of a deal. But it's just really strange. It's mind blowing to me that these new buildings are coming, because I thought like during the pandemic, like any referendums would at that time, a year or two ago, would instantly just be required to have these. And I didn't like you would, and again, like if you're telling your community it's going to be, the building's going to cost 2% more because we're going with a better HVAC, the community would say fine. I mean, because the parents, if you say it's likely, less likely we'd have to close school, your kids will be here, they'd be like, it sounds good to us. You could market that. That's a marketable thing. But I don't know. It's really weird. So if you get into it right now and you're like, we have all these building referendums, and some of these are operational referendums, but we do have a lot of building referendums in fall, and these buildings are not won't have better HVAC systems than the buildings that passed in referendum 3-4 years ago. So they're not going for this higher standard, which why would you? It doesn't make sense to me, because it's not a barrier. The cost isn't a barrier. The referendum isn't going to fail if you go with a better HVAC system. In fact, I think it would have a better chance of passing. But it's really weird. But can you imagine being a superintendent in a district where there's an addition put on a school in a bigger district, and when it's done, you learn there's no PA system. Like, the PA system was never extended. And then you not only learn that, then the contractor's like, it's done, you paid us, goodbye. And so then how do you get it fixed? Who do you bring in? And then they have to like try to interface it with your existing system. And there are people who do that, but then you're kind of like, well, what else didn't get done the way that it was supposed to get done? What is hiding in the electrical work, right? And how well are the floor tiles, glued down, and everything looks new, for 3-4 years. Like, even if it's not put together, everything has that new shiny feel to it. And when my dad was a school administrator, a school principal, K-8, they built a new building while he was a K-8 principal, and he checked on that building all the way throughout the construction process, like daily. And actually back then, the builder, because I used to go with him a number of times. It'd be after school or on weekends. You would be checking out the progress in different parts of the building, and the builder had a lot of pride, like the general contractor of that school, and was using that school also to showcase. That was back in '86, to other districts of, here's what's possible, right, if you go with us. And just a very, very high level of detail. But part of that was twofold. I think my dad had a big part in that of you need to be watching what is happening here. But yeah, it's interesting. So let's see here. Armageddon preparedness. It's amazing how inexperienced many school administrators are when it comes to building construction and hiring the appropriate consultants. Yeah. And school boards. But it is, so in my state, they do have an option now. There's this thing called a CESA, Cooperative Educational Service Agency. There's 12 of them in the state, and they are regional, and they serve 30-40 school districts typically, and provide low instance services like for hearing impaired students, stuff like that. But they also provide like accounting and things like that if you have a really small district. But there's one that has now specialized in building referendums and on-site management and stuff like that. So that's a good thing, because they're working, they know the stuff, and they're on the school side of it. But otherwise, you really don't know, right? If you're a school and you go to referendum, and I've seen schools who have appointed like a principal and say, in addition to your job, you're the project manager for the on-site stuff. So I had a principal tell me once, like, that they were expected to be able to look at wiring and know if the right gauge of wire was used. And they're like, how am I, this is crazy. Like, shouldn't this be a building inspector or something like that? But that was, and so, and not that this is pervasive in building companies, but a school, there's a few things though. School is to the lowest bidder. Schools also, their government and the schools pay up on the contracts, and they have high turnover. So after, again, 3-4 years, you have different administration, probably different school boards. So if something is holding up in that school, you have different people in charge now than when the building was put together. And you have a lot of subcontracting out on school projects. So there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen, I guess. And a school isn't necessarily going to know unless they have a really thorough buildings and grounds, department, maybe, of if they're getting is really authentically what they're supposed to be getting. I mean, I saw new construction 10 years ago, new bathrooms that weren't ADA compliant. So how does that happen in a school? Like, how do you do brand new construction of bathrooms? And then at that time it was recognized very quickly. And then the contractor did come back. But like, how does that happen? How is that not kind of picked up on day one? And I think part of it is and everybody's busy, right? But you need your whoever wins the contract to build a school, they need to be meeting with the school project coordinator on at least a weekly basis and to do a walkthrough and say, here's what we've done, here's what's coming next. And to kind of compare like the blueprints and show like that stuff. But I don't think that happens very consistently. So good. So Benny Ballistics, I'll catch everyone Wednesday night. I got to get some sleep. I'm exhausted. Thanks for a great show. That I appreciate it. And guys, Armageddon, welcome. And please subscribe if you haven't been here. Wednesday, we do have Benny Ballistics back on the show. And you can read actually quite a bit about what we'll cover in the show description. That's already out on YouTube. So guys, I am going to call it a night too, because I was up at 4:40 and I drove 4 hours today and taught for almost 8 hours. And I'm tired. So, and I know if I'm tired, it's time to go to bed and to not push it. I'm not 20 years old anymore. So, with that said, everybody, thank you for, oh my goodness, as we just are about to exit the show here, look at this guy, CNT Designs, our good friend, Coop. So welcome, Coop. You're just on the tail end of this one. I am about to say good night. And, but Coop, I posted your video on Twitter and bang your head, dun, 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 right? So AC/DC, that's awesome. I'm so appreciative to see the progress on that logo. So wow, it was 82 degrees here today, 75 tomorrow, 74 on Monday, so which is about 30 degrees above normal. So it's awesome. My neighbor though, he said like, oh, this is good, but like now when it does drop off and we hit the cold weather, it's gonna really hit us. So I'm like, yeah, but at least we got this. So anything that can kind of shorten winter here is a good thing. So DLT, good deal. So hey, CNT, Benny Ballistics, Armageddon, and all. I'm going to take us out here. So have a terrific night. If it's warm by you, get out and enjoy that warm weather, especially like here in this Wisconsin Midwest area. We've got some phenomenal weather going on. Wednesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Benny Ballistics is going to be my guest. So start thinking and planning ahead for that. So take care, everybody. We got the new microphone. We got the new headphones, but we have the old way to take us out here with our good pals, our two pilots from Canada. Here we go.
How were the beans and chili that you had for breakfast?
They were delicious. Thank you for asking. But now I am very gassy.
I'm sorry to hear that. Who let the frogs out? Pew? That stinks very bad. I have to open the window. Oh no. My cap flew off and it was sucked into the engine.
Holy smokes, the engine just cut out. We should use the Decide model to help us make the right decision.
Mayday. Mayday. I am declaring a beans and chili emergency. Please advise for landing.
Flight 019er, 2 miles northeast. Turn left at 90. Maintain 4,800 to establish an approach. Engine 5, dispatch. Pockets of fire all around.
As chaos erupts, torrents of conflicting yet urgent messages gush from media outlets. What is the magnitude of the incident, and what should people do to protect themselves? Dr. David P. Perodin teaches you how to prevent mental burnout by observing indicators and building a robust member check network. Reporter James David Dixon of the Detroit News proclaims, the velocity of information will empower its readers. Drawing on current events, history, interviews, and scholarship, the velocity of information is an education in the way people react and adapt to change in this fast-spinning world. Never has it been more important to sift facts and stories for truth and meaning. There are teachable moments on every page. Buy The Velocity of Information, Human Thinking During Chaotic Times. Available from your favorite bookstore or online retailer.
Describe the odor. Is it like when something electrical is burning? And so on. Ridiculous, right? We don't shift the investigation to the reporter, but that's covertly what the school district thought needed to happen to prevent their investigation scrambling principals from burning out. And as this paragraph smolders, it would be prudent to consider bringing students with disabilities from the sidelines of safety and center them to active roles of detecting and reporting threats. So we had a rather difficult meeting. Upon due diligence of examining the reporting system, I informed the district representative that I could not justify modifications to the existing model, as such changes would make the system less accessible to students. Well, that was a short chit-chat. The district folks believed, or hoped, that the threat input system could be modified and maintained with fidelity. I wasn't in alignment with that hypothesis, and so I was thanked and given notice that our partnership would be over at month's end. Business is business, but in school safety, it's never as simple as that.